pharmaceutical products, meron po tayo yung for CPR. Meron po kasi mga produkto katulad po ng ivermectin na registered na naman po sa ibang bansa na pwede pong mag-register ng CPR dito sa atin. Kaya ang ginagawa po ng ating Center for Drug Regulation and Research under Director Joyce Runay, pina-fast track naman po ang process basta under COVID-19 related products. And so far, I think we have 2 applications, 1 manufacturer and 1 importer. And they have been working closely with our Center for Drugs para nga po pinipre-assess ng mabilis at kung anong kulang nila, ma-submit agad. And once we have, of course, substantial compliance with all the requirements so that we can finish the evaluation very, very quickly. We also fast-track donations, kasama po kasi ito sa bayanihan, 1 and 2. So naglabas po tayo ng guidelines dyan, hindi na po nahihirapan sa customs. Basta po donation siya at saka good quality po yung produkto at may registration doon sa bandang pinanggalingan, automatic na po yan. Hindi na po naiipit dahil marami po nagdo-donate ng mga PPE especially po. Lalo na po last year nung wala pa pong masyadong gumagawa dito sa atin. For medical devices, we've also made new guidelines for giving special permits for medical devices. Ito po yung mga test kit for COVID-19. And as of now, nagde-register po sila, pagkatapos nagpapavalidate po sila sa RITM, at ngayon po na napakarami na ng kit, nag-set na rin po tayo ng minimum performance requirements for kits para po yung mga kit na masyadong mababa ang accuracy ay hindi po magamit dito sa Pilipinas. And as of now, we've had our Center for Medical Devices has issued 865 special certifications for diagnostic kits. Halo-halo na po ito, yung RT-PCR, antibody, antigen, at iba-iba pa pong klaseng. Marami po kasing mabilis mag-evolve itong mga test kits. We also have given special permits for the use of mobile loaned x-rays kasi nga po iniikot itong mga x-ray devices natin dahil kailangan po ng mga hospital natin at binamadali po nila yung pag-approve po ng mga application ng mga CT scan and other radiologic services ng hospitals. So as a as a summary, so far since the start of the COVID pandemic, we've approved 865 diagnostic kits. We have given CPRs to 527 personal protective equipment. Halo-halo na po ito, cap, mask, gowns, mga shields po na ginagamit. Yun pong ating Center for Cosmetics, pinabilis din po nila yung pag-license ng mga manufacturers ng alcohol. Yung dati pong gumagawa ng alak, halimbawa, gumagawa na po ng sanitizers ngayon, and we registered them very quickly kasi nagkaubusan din po ng alcohol and sanitizers nung umpisa. So we now have approved more than 4,000 new alcohol and sanitizers. Yung compassionate special permit po natin, halos 2,000 na po, and we receive this every day. And the turnaround time for this is 24 to 48 hours. Basta po nag-request ang hospital. Mabilis naman po. For clinical trials, we have 28. Drugs for emergency use, 48, and 6 emergency use authorizations for the vaccines that we are using right now. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Director General Eric Domingo. Before we proceed to the other resource persons, may I invite the lead initiator of House Resolution 1711, the Honorable Bernadette Herrera, to give her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, magpapasalamat po kami sa inyo ni Speaker Lord Alan Velasco for scheduling right away this motu proprio investigation para naman po agad-agad mapabilis natin ang pagbabago sa ilang rules and regulations sa ating DOH and FDA. And I'm happy that kahit kaka-file pa lang natin ito, marami ng actions ang ginawa ang FDA. Sabi nga niya, this is a continuous effort to always improve the service of each and every agency of our country. Anyway, Mr. Chair, I have a presentation, very quick lang, just so to throw in why we thought of filing this resolution. Actually, I started with the tocilizumab issue when a lot of, when a lot of our constituents have been calling and crying and asking for this drug, the tocilizumab, na kailangan ng mga pasyente, ngunit, next slide please, ngunit walang available sa market. So isa po yan sa, biglang napaisip ako, why do we put COVID treatment protocols kung hindi tayo sigurado kung magkakakuha tayo ng supply dito sa ating bansa? And I learned that there's only one supplier in the world at hindi pa priority ang ating bansa. So, we will only create despair to the Filipino people when we say, oh, itong magpapagaling sa iyo, pero walang available sa bansa natin. So, ang sa akin, the responsibility of looking for a COVID protocol should be the question also, do we have access to this drug? Lagi nga sinasabi ni Speaker, our quest is always to find the accessible and affordable COVID treatment protocols for our Filipino people. So dito po kami nagsimula sa issue nitong tocilizumab. I understand, kaya nga siya dini-EU para mapabilis ang entry. Pero it seems, despite the DEU, the presence of this medicine in this country is still very scarce up to now. Next. And then katulad nga ng sinabi natin dun sa Department Memo 2020-013 appointing PSMID as the susundin yung clinical practice guidelines ng PSMID. Question ko noon, is this the only medical society we rely on? And I'm happy that because of all the noise that we've been making for the past several weeks, pinalawak na ng DOH, ng FDA, ang kanilang iba't ibang societies to help us use this COVID protocols. Kasi aren't we stifling the flexibility of our doctors? Then naniniwala ako, in times of pandemic, creativity, innovativeness of all the specialists are needed in order to find solutions to our problem. Kasi nagkakamatayan na po yung mga tao natin. So kailangan nating makinig sa mas maraming experts and not just limited to one. Kaya I'm happy na pinalawak pa, but if we could stretch it further and allow flexibility and innovativeness of our doctors and experts, that should be something we should always continuously look into. Kasama po dito sa department memo is Annex A. And nakita ko po next dito, sa rapid review ng tocilizumab, ang nakalagay naman po sa kanya is based on one observational study, there appears to be some benefit associated with the use of tocilizumab among patients with severe COVID-19. More clinical trials are needed to assess its efficacy and safety among COVID-19 patients with varying disease severity. Next, please. Ito naman po ang sinabing conclusion ng PSMID when it comes to leponavir and ritonavir. Nakalagay po dito, based on one clinical trial, there is no to little benefit in clinical improvement among patients with severe COVID-19 if given early. However, more studies are needed to confirm whether the risk for complications such as respiratory failure and ARDS can be reduced by administration of leponavir and ritonavir. At this time, there's insufficient evidence to conclude on the effectiveness of these drugs in patients with COVID-19. More high-quality randomized controlled trials are needed. Next. Pagdating naman po sa remdesivir, ito po ang sinabi. There is insufficient evidence regarding the effectiveness of remdesivir in the treatment of COVID-19. Numerous clinical trials are still underway. Meron pa pong isa doon nakalagay, corticosteroids probably reduce mortality and mechanical ventilation in patients with COVID-19 compared with standard care. Whereas azithromycin, hydroxychloroquine, interferon beta, and tocilizumab may not reduce either. Whether or not remdesivir confers any patient-important benefit remains uncertain. So, pumasok po sa utak ko while reading this, how does FDA then decide which drugs to place under the EU? Kasi ito rin po yung naririnig kong arguments tungkol sa leronlimab, sa ivermectin, and other drugs. Pag sinasabing ayaw ilagay sa DEU dahil sinasabi inconclusive pa, kulang pa ng clinical trials. Pero ito pong mga binanggit ko, 3 days later, April 2, inilabas po itong Memorandum Circular March 31, 2020. After 3 days, April 2, nakalagay po dito, ito na po yung mga drugs for emergency use. Next slide, please. Next. Yan, nakalagay po dyan. Ito na po. Pero despite all the conclusions, nilagay po natin siya for drugs for emergency use. So, ano po ba ang deciding factor natin every time we put drugs for emergency use? Kasi ako, the more drugs we put under there, the better. Because the more choices our doctors have and freely makakapasok ang mga gamot na to. And I'm happy, sabi nyo na, in-expand nyo na. I hope to see kung ano-ano po yung nilagay nyo under the EU. Next. Now, when do we listen to WHO? That's also one thing that amazes me because noon, di ba sinabi ng WHO, huwag mag-mask, i-reserve para sa mga frontliners, i-reserve para sa mga doktor. And then, hindi rin naman sila nag-agree sa face shield. And then they are questioning AstraZeneca and J&J and banned remdesivir. But despite all this, tayo po dito sa Pilipinas ay patuloy pa rin po ang paggamit natin sa mga drugs nito. So, when do we listen to WHO and when do we not follow them? Next, please. So, ito na po, na-explain naman na kanina kung paano yung CSP ni Yusek Domingo. So, yung susunod naman po na question natin is, yung atin po bang process for EUA is consistent with that of other countries? That is something that I'm interested on finding out. Next, please. It has come to our attention that our own local pharma can produce drugs that we need like tocilizumab, remdesivir, ivermectin, etc. But it seems it is harder for them to register. Parang lumalabas, mas madali pang mag-import kesa tulungan natin yung ating local pharma to register their drugs here. Kasi pag ginamit natin yung local pharma natin, unang-una, it could be mas madami ang supply, it could be cheaper, and at the same time, may accessibility yung mga gamot natin. Kaya ang tanong ko, why don't we make the process for our local manufacturers easier? When I was conversing with Yusek Domingo, sabi nga niya, the easiest track for a CPR is to import. Pero para sa akin, in times of pandemic, we have to look into our own resources because we have to be self-sufficient. And the number one responsibility is to look into our very own resources and to make use of those. Kindly, next slide please. Kaya dapat, we should support our local pharma industries para po mapabilis at mapadami ang iba't ibang drugs available in our country. Next, please. Ito po yung isang gusto kong tanungin sa FDA. Meron po tayong national guidelines for product registration for over-the-counter and prescription drugs. Dati po, kahit for prescription drugs, ginagamit po natin itong national guidelines na to. But because of an admin order, 2013-0021, we decided to adopt the ASEAN Common Technical Dossier and Common Technical Requirements, or ACTD and ATCR. Next slide, please. So because we adopted that, naging napakahirap para sa ating local pharma para makapag-register ng ating prescription drugs. Diba dati kasi parang 12 requirements lang. National guidelines naman natin to, guidelines to ng ating bansa. But because of a department order, we decided to adopt the ASEAN. So nung nagsumali tayo sa ASEAN, dumami ang requirements. Naging 33 or times 3 of the requirements. Next slide, please. Now, syempre pag ganitong pandemya, we have to be flexible without sacrificing the safety, efficacy, and quality of our medicines or drugs in this country. Kaya this is something worth looking into. Maybe we can pause the ASEAN and go back to our national guidelines. Because in this way, mapapabilis po natin ang pag-register ng mga CPR ng iba't ibang gamot, especially for those medicines na kailangan natin for COVID-19. I understand FDA has just presented na meron tayong 5 out of stock critical drugs. Diba? And this is the time to tap our local pharma industries and help them. Diba? Kung ako nga po yun, sabi nga ni Speaker, it's better pa to give them loans, diba? Soft loans or subsidy, or tulungan natin sila para they can produce the necessary medicines that we need for our country. So basically, that's all, Mr. Chair. Gusto ko lang pong i-bring up why this is necessary in this time of pandemic because at the end of the day, we need to have access to affordable COVID protocol treatment in the country. Yun ang pinaka-importante po doon, affordable and accessible para po sa ating mamamayang Pilipino. Kaya hopefully, after this hearing, we could see what guidelines we could really adjust in order to do and achieve such. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker B.H. Herrera. Before we proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the members who joined. Representative Franz Castro, Representative VG Lacson, Representative Onyx Crisologo, Deputy Speaker Dante Marcoleta, Representative Mike Defensor, Representative John Marvy Marino, Representative Sol Alagones, Representative Lollipop Dizon, Representative Claudine Bautista, Representative Ferdinand Gaite, and Representative Aldo Duhali. So a lot of resource persons have signed up to give opening statements. May I remind those resource persons to briefly explain their points, or if they can do it in 5 minutes, that would help the committee in accomplishing a lot today. So first off, to give her opening statement, may I recognize Ms. Lynn Robles of PCPI Technical Director. Ms. Lynn Robles, you are recognized for your 5-minute opening statement.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. Can we have the presentation, please? Slide 2, please. May we have the presentation? Slide 2, please. Good morning, everybody. This is my very short presentation about the delay in processing registration at the FDA CDRR. Next slide, please. Here is the list. Here's the table of pending, delayed, awaiting release CPR, Certificate of Product Registration from FDA. For low risk to no risk application, examples are automatic renewals and for validation. As of March 29, 2021, from just 34 out of the 100 member companies, from 2013 to 2021, for automatic renewal, there are a total of 381 applications still pending. For revalidation, there are 98 applications still pending. So a total is 479 applications just for automatic renewal and revalidation. For automatic renewal, the requirements are it has been filed before the expiration date, payment has been made, and an undertaking that there were no changes in the registration. Next slide, please. These are pending, delayed, awaiting release CPR, Certificate of Product Registration from FDA, for high-risk applications, example, initial applications and others. As of April 19, 2021, from just 30 out of the 100 companies. For initial registration, 538 from 2015 and up to the present. Major variation, 484. variation term initial 3. So from just 30 companies, there are a total of 1,025 pending registrations. For LTO or license to operate, there are 18 from 2018, GMP certificate 5, foreign GMP 27. Next slide, please. Last March 26, 2021, a DOH letter was received by PCPI asking for inventory of 193 products for COVID-19 management. Last April 14, 2021, on the TWG meeting on drug security, it was established that, or it was mentioned that tocilizumab was out of stock, plus other drugs like remdesivir, pavir tablet, enoxaparin, propylol, heparin, sodium bicarbonate, dexamethasone, human albumin, and 4 more others. That's my short presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Lynn Robles, do you have a opening statement on the DOH report on out-of-stock medicines? That's it already. Is that the one?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next to have an opening statement is Dr. Charles Regalado. Dr. Charles, are you present?
Yeah, hello.
You are not. Please give your 5-minute opening statement, sir.
So anyway, in relation to what we're talking, one of the group of drugs that has a notable increase in its use that are classified as sedatives. This includes but are not limited to benzodiazepines such as midazolam, diazepam, opioids such as fentanyl, nalgene, and other drugs like ketamine, propofol, dexmedetomidine, and other anesthetic drugs. So these drugs, as their classification implies, sedates patients, affording them relaxation. So dito, yung mga gamot na to, ito yung mga nagpapatulog, paparelax sa pasyente. So the reason of this group of drugs increased usage is directly proportional to the alarmingly escalating indication to intubate patients brought about the complications secondary to the COVID-19 virus. Okay, ano yung sinasabi ko intubation? Ito yung tracheal intubation. It is a procedure in where a flexible plastic tube is placed into the patient's mouth, then directed and inserted into the patient's trachea. Or in layman's term, doon sa windpipe ng pasyente. Okay? So, once the patient is intubated, the exposed external end of the endotracheal tube is connected to a machine called a mechanical ventilator. Okay? So, that mechanical ventilator helps push air inside the patient's lung, therefore assist in the patient's breathing. Okay, ito ngayon yan. The process of intubation and subsequent attachment to a mechanical ventilator is a very stressful sequence of events for the patient and the doctors. Okay, so dyan papasok yung gamot. Well, anyway, to give everybody an idea, okay, imagine this. Now, you are the patient and you are having a hard time breathing and you feel that you are running out of air. Then the doctor tells you, "Ma'am, sir, in order for us to progress with treatment, we need to intubate your trachea. Kailangan ka nang tubuhin." Educated as you are, understanding the necessity, you consent for the procedure. Payag ka. No? And then the doctor positions himself to intubate you. He then tells you, "We don't have sedatives as of the moment. Out of stock po. We have no choice but to intubate you." Wow, I tell you, if this ever happens to you, this will be one of the worst things that you will ever experience. Okay? So, and on the doctor's part, He and his team will have an increased risk of contracting your disease as you vigorously cough, releasing massive amounts of respiratory droplets into the air. And we already know, it's a known fact that COVID is transmitted through respiratory droplets. This scenario may be one of the reasons also na tumataas ang rate ng transmission involving doctors and nurses. So, what I share to you may be just as well as they say the tip of the iceberg. Ang dami-daming gamot, ang dami-daming kailangan, ang dami-daming. Pero isa lang ito. But I believe this is enough information and knowledge for both lay people, doctors and nurses to only but hope that this IV medication such as this will always be available. Ayun lang po, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Charles. Next to give her opening statement is Attorney Lorna Filipino, the legal consultant of the PCPI. Attorney Lorna, are you here?
Mr. Chair, thank you so much for the recognition.
Yes, please limit to 5 minutes your opening statement, ma'am.
Yes, please. The next slide from Ms. Robles. Next slide, please. Following Ms. Robles' presentation.
Comsec, the slides next to
Ms. Robles. Thank you. Following the next slide, please. Okay. Just a brief background. In drug registration at FDA, Philippine CDRR, why the delay? Next slide, please. I am saying likely because, of course, we have not gone into each detail why the processing of the CPRs or the applications have been so much delayed that can date as far back as 2014, 2015. But if you would notice, if you would recall the presentation of Congressman Herrera, she was mentioning about the 2013 adoption of the ACTR and ACTD. Since 2013 up to now, the transition from the national guidelines and requirements to ACTR and ACTD has contributed to the accumulation of pending application in FDA. Another thing, there is the use of CDRR resources to the no to low risk applications like automatic renewal or post-approval changes depletes the resources for the drug product initial registration. So that instead of focusing on the new application, the evaluation of the automatic renewal and post-approval changes are eating those resources. And although Director General Domingo has in fact presented the faster lane for COVID-19 products, we would of course notice that there is no institutional issuance on when or what products can be placed in the fast or green lane. Next slide, please. Next slide. So we are looking at how needed medicines can be fast-tracked into the market. So we have looked into the first generic drug products, the first interchangeable with originator brand product to be marketed after the expiry of patent or exclusivity rights. Perhaps this is one type of product that the agency can look into based on the need and national interest to place them in a fast and priority lane for GMP certified local manufacturers so that we can have our own supply and not be dependent on imports. Next slide, please. As to the out of stocks or depleting stocks of essential drugs and drug products for investigational treatment for COVID-19 management, we have seen that these drug products have been identified and in fact listed. But most, if not all of them, are prescription drugs. And therefore, when a company in the Philippines will apply for registration, they would have to follow the ACTR and ACTD. And we all know how difficult that would be and how tedious the process of evaluation that's going to be taken. So it cannot be fast-tracked, or the supply cannot be fast-tracked. So we should look at this as it is our national interest to allow the national guidelines and requirements for GMP certified local manufacturers to apply and make these products available, provide a fast lane. If we go back to the ACTD and ACTR and place them in the regular lane, we cannot have those supply as fast as we want to have. Next slide, please. Now, Dr. Domingo has already presented that they have expanded the DEU to include drug products in the treatment protocol of other medical societies or frontline doctors. Next slide, please. We are actually looking into that because it is not only the clinical management is not exclusive to the PISMID group. There are frontline doctors who need medicines, and if they are not registered in FDA, they would not be able to prescribe them. And the only way to make those products available is for FDA to consider them in the DEU so that there will be an abridged or a fewer registration requirements. And then if those products are listed there, then the manufacturers and the local manufacturers can apply for the registration and the products can be made available to our doctors. Next slide, please. I think that ends up my presentation. Mr. Engineer John Porty would present for the best practices among ASEAN countries. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and the group.
Okay, the next slide, please. The continuation of the presentation of Attorney Lorna. Okay, amazing morning, esteemed and honorable members of the House of Representatives. Mr. Chair, what I will be presenting is more for the long term. In the midst of the drug shortages that we are experiencing today during this pandemic, due to global supply problem, how can our country achieve self-sufficiency and develop our domestic pharma industry in the near future? In the next 3 slides, I will be showing to you how the biggest pharma industry in Southeast Asia, that of Indonesia, achieved self-sufficiency and developed its local pharma industry through a government decree, the BP 1010. But before I go into that, let me show you a comparative analysis on the support of the government in the local pharma industry in our country versus that of Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia. Next slide, please. Okay, we can see from this matrix, in the Philippines, almost all of government procurement of medicine are imported. The share of locally produced pharma products in our country is now down to 32% from 36% in 1980s. Manufacturing base of GlaxoSmithKline, J&J, left the country and transferred to Thailand and Vietnam because of the difficulty in registering new products here in the Philippines. In Vietnam, the government is targeting an increase in the share of locally produced pharma products from 50% in 2019 to 70% in 2023. In Thailand, 85% of the government requirements for medicine are locally produced. They already have built pharmaceutical hub for R&D of biotech pharma products and now strengthening export capability of the local pharma companies. In Indonesia, the BP 1010, this is protecting locally produced medicine. So I will now be discussing Indonesia's BP 1010. This is a decree of the Minister of Health on drug registration, the objective of which is to, aside from safety, efficacy, and self-sufficiency, they are supporting and they develop the local pharmaceutical industry. Next slide, please. So how is drug registered in Indonesia? Drug to be distributed in Indonesia must have prior registration. It requires marketing authorization issued by the Minister of Health and authorized by the head of national agency, the equivalent of FDA. The criteria are evidence of safety, efficacy, proven through animal and clinical trials, production processes in accordance with GMP, and based on real need in the community. Ganun lang ka-simple. The registration of domestically manufactured drugs naman can only be executed by a licensed pharmaceutical industry. And it must have GMP certificate issued by the head of national agency. Next slide, please. Now, if you want to market, if you are outside of the country, Indonesia, and you want to market your drug products in Indonesia, you need to contract a licensed domestic contractor in Indonesia. Okay, it can only be executed by a contracting party, a licensed pharmaceutical industry, and the contractor is a domestic licensed pharmaceutical industry with GMP certificate. Now, if the local pharma companies in the country, in Indonesia, doesn't have the capability yet to produce that product, they can import that product, but it can only be executed by local pharmaceutical industry with written consent by the overseas pharmaceutical industry. The written consent has to include transfer of technology and should be locally manufactured after 5 years. Exception are drugs under patent, but domestic industry may apply for registration of patented drugs 2 years before the expiration of the patent. Inaabangan na nila yung pag-expire ng patent at 2 years before the expiration, nag-a-apply na yung mga local companies. At yung iba ay nagpuproduce na nga risk production para pag-lapse ng patent ay available na readily locally sa kanilang bansa. So, ganito po ginawa ng Indonesia kaya naka-achieve sila ng self-sufficiency sa supply ng medicine at pinopromote talaga nila yung local pharma industry. Together with DTI, DOH, and the various pharma industry associations, we are now crafting the Philippine pharma industry roadmap. This is our first step towards self-sufficiency in the near future and achieve global competitiveness in the pharma industry. This is worthwhile considering that ours is the third biggest pharma industry in Southeast Asia, next to Thailand and Indonesia. We are also the second fastest growing pharma industry in Southeast Asia, next to Vietnam. We have great scientists and globally competitive technical workforce. We are happy that we are now getting the much needed support from the government for the local pharma industry. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Engineer Forte. We will now proceed with the interpellations from our members. We will recognize interpellators on the first to register basis, and please register with the committee secretary. You have 20 minutes to ask your questions and answers,
Mr. Chair.
including any comments, manifestations made. Yes, DS?
Mr. Chair. Yes, I think
Yes.
yung ibang resource persons, meron pa rin silang ipresent like Dr. Dalmacion. I think they also have a presentation.
They did not list with the committee secretary. They were not part of the list.
I forwarded it. Can we accommodate them, Mr. Chair, so that we can just also get their perspective? I sent their names,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
What's the
Yung sa
name?
mga resource persons po. Dr. Dalmacion.
Okay. Dr. Delmacion, please give your 5-minute opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Can I just share a slide? Can you see the slides already? Good morning
Yes.
to all the members of the August body and to all present. Just a disclaimer, I am also a member of the PRC Board of Medicine and a member of the Concerned Doctors and Citizens of the Philippines, but my opinions and commentaries do not reflect the stand of the PRC. So my objective really to become acting as a resource person is to answer 3 questions. Are the policies and regulations of the Philippine FDA still relevant? Does the issuance of emergency use authorization entirely dependent on randomized clinical trial, double-blind, placebo-controlled? And what is a fatal sequela to miscommunicating evidence during a pandemic? May I just mention, I will not discuss CPG because it's only the Philippines that came out with the CPG. Even the US NIH only has a treatment guideline, which is very, very different from a clinical practice guideline, which is an official, systematically developed decision-making for both patient and doctor. So unfortunately, only PISMID, representing the Philippines, has issued a CPG for COVID-19, which is almost impossible to create now. So this is my slide. I do not see my slide. Please tell me. What is important here is the clinical trial approval. In the United States, when you say unapproved, it is still undergoing clinical trial. And so what they have now is a pathway in 1992 because of the HIV epidemics. Gay community was dying from HIV or AIDS. Anthony Fauci proposed for a parallel track. No? So from phase 3, you do not need the approval of FDA. At the same time that they were doing the clinical trial, the patients can avail, specifically of the investigational new drug. And this is the beginning of the concept of emergency use authorization. I'm sorry, I cannot see my slide. Do you see the X means the Philippine FDA does not have this regulation and therefore a policy review is imperative. Now, another problem with the Philippines FDA is the definition of compassionate special permit. In the United States, if a drug is being used by the patient and suddenly stopped because the clinical trial has stopped, he undergoes a recurrence, it can become aggravated because the drug is already stopped. And compassionate use in the United States means that you are allowing this patient to continue taking the drug because a severe setback can happen. So these are not present in the Philippines. Now, unfortunately, the FDA interprets it differently. In 1992, because of the AIDS epidemic, Secretary Flavier issued the CSP, especially for 3 conditions only: AIDS, cancer, life-threatening condition. And it pertains to products which are not registered. In the United States, it pertains to unapproved drugs. So let me just tell you the story why emergency use authorization developed in the United States. It happened because they found out that with the swine flu in 1976, you can have a pandemic. And it was the first time that the United States issued a mass vaccination program. And when you say there is a pandemic, you do not need vaccines and drugs alone. The United States called it medical countermeasures, which includes ventilators, diagnostic kit, PPEs, everything under the sun that can manage the pandemic. So as I've mentioned, you have 1992, and this was the beginning of parallel approval. In 9/11, I think that broke the camel's back. They created the BioShield project because they were afraid of a biological warfare. And this was authorizing FDA to issue authorization to use unapproved products for a public health emergency. So in 9/11, in 2001, the anthrax attack, and therefore, under the Project BioShield of 2004, they said that the special reserve fund should be used to incentivize development of medical countermeasures. And because it is not profitable, the reserve funds had to fund this. So in 2005, if you will notice, my title is CBRN, which means we are not only after diseases, biological warfare, chemical, radiation, and nuclear are included to declare a public health emergency and threat to security. And in 2006, they created PAPA, which is the backbone of health security, authorizes the FDA to issue emergency use authorization. And they also created the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Act. Because of the Asian flu, also came from China, they reauthorized the FDA and they called this 2013 PAPRA. No? Remember, emergency use authorization is revoked.
Dr. Dalmacion,
Okay.
how many slides will you present? Because I saw the slide. I think it's a lot.
Okay. First, so there should be a declaration of emergency, and the one that now in the Philippines there is a declaration of emergency by the president. However, in the FDA circular, it says sustain and strengthen the national preparedness. But what policy or law is FDA referring to? So this was cut and paste from the U.S. guidance. So U.S. guidance was referring to PAPRA. So I do not know which. So exact word to sustain and strengthen. Now, the EUA in the Philippines authorized unregistered drug and vaccine. All unapproved drugs are not registered, but not all unregistered drugs are unapproved. So in the United States, it is authorization to the public of an unapproved product or unapproved use of an approved product. So mahirap po yun. Iba po yun. There's a big difference between that. So in the FDA circular, kasi tatlo po ang kailangan mo para mag-declare ng emergency. Reasonable effectiveness, risk-benefit, no alternative drug. So tapos, let's go to effectiveness. Anong sabi ng FDA? It is the totality, no, of evidence and from adequate well-controlled. Anong sabi ng Amerika? It may be effective for a lower level of evidence, and it intends to assess the potential effectiveness of a possible emergency use authorization product on a case-to-case basis. Kaya hindi po talaga pwedeng maglabas ng clinical practice guideline ang anumang bansa. Maski ang remdesivir, which is conditionally stopped by the WHO, tinutuloy pa ho ng US NIH. Bakit? Because it depends on the patient. No? It is a contract. Treatment is a contract between the provider and the patient. So, ano ang sinasabi ng remdesivir? Ang remdesivir was not approved based on a randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind. No, it was based on an adaptive clinical trial wherein they started with the placebo and eventually they had it open. So everybody knows what each was taking. No? So it was a question of if you add something to this usual care, dihydroxychloroquine, ritonavir, ano ang mangyayari pag dinagdag mo ang remdesivir? So sa US FDA, the risk benefit must take into consideration the material threat posed by the emergency. No? So yung sa ating
Excuse me, I'm going to have to cut you up. I need to give you 2 more minutes kasi naka 10 minutes na po kayo.
Okay.
So please wind up.
Okay, so there's no alternative. We have to talk of insufficient supplies too. What I'm trying to say is that we have to look at these 3 conditions for issuing an emergency use authorization. And my last slide is a projection. Okay, I'm sorry, I have to use this drug because it is the cheapest. It is a repurposed drug. No, so I'm just showing to you. If you can see this, this is actually our death from January 2021 up to February, end of February. And this is your actual death. We are projecting that it is underreported by 30%. So if you use ivermectin, which is a I am not telling you to use it. I am just giving this an example because it is the only drug that you have a meta-analysis. So doon sa meta-analysis, sinasabi niya, bababa ang death mo. There will be reduction in death, no? By as high can be low, the middle line is 72%. So ito po yung overestimate ng kanyang efficacy, no? This is an underestimate. It will go down. This is your actual death. It will go down. And this is the best estimate. Okay. So I think that will be my last slide and open for any questions. I'm sorry for taking the time.
Thank you po, Doctora. Next to interpolate is, next to give his opening statement is Dr. Benigno Agbayani Jr., the President of Concerned Doctors and Citizens of the Philippines, former Chair of the Department of Orthopedics, Manila Doctors. Dr. Benigno Agbayani,
Thank you.
are you present?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. May I share my slides, please? Can they put up my slides or I can share it? May I be allowed to share my slides, please? Mr. Chair, wala po yung yung
Comsec, the slides of Dr. Agbayani is projected. Please share.
yan na po, yan na po. Yeah, yan na po. So I will just present the half of my talk because of the time limitation. But basically, I'm here to talk about the double standard and conflicts of interest and why ivermectin is an efficacious drug against COVID-19. But let me begin with full disclosure. I think this is very important because, as you know, so many doctors are talking about this, but we have to show that we are impartial. So I've been sponsored by various orthopedic implant companies and pharma companies in the past 20 years, and I have received travel and accommodations bonuses to Rome, London, Paris, Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok. And these are mainly from companies that provide joint replacements, sports medicine, implants, and arthroscopy devices. I have not received any sponsorship or funding from Merck, Gilead, Sanofi, or any of the subsidiaries or representatives of those companies in the Philippines. I'm the president of the newly formed Concerned Doctors and Citizens, a non-stock, non-profit organization that have not received any gifts or sponsorship from pharmaceutical or medical companies. Well, it all started on March 15 when the FDA came out with this circular, which announced that only the registered ivermectin is for animal use only, with prejudice to compounded ivermectin. And this was signed by Director General Domingo. And this one is in March 27, saying that prescribing an unregistered drug but authorized drug, a criminal or unethical act by doctors, because this is what the PMA was implying. However, as a physician, it is the only life-saving option available in the Philippines. So I have so much doubts about this particular circular sent out by the PMA. So another negative effect on us doctors. However, the FDA around a few weeks ago came out with this statement actually saying simply off-label prescribing of ivermectin is legal, and it's in the last paragraph. And we all know that the ivermectin is in the Philippine National Formulary, and therefore an approved FDA drug, however, approved for use in as an antiparasite. And around March 19, there was a statement where the FDA was included among the other societies here, and they came out of the statement using only 6 randomized controlled trials, when there are in fact 24 randomized controlled trials, therefore concluding that there is not enough evidence. It's important to note, and this is a crucial thing about conflicts of interest. Merck Incorporated actually came out in February 4, stating that no scientific basis, there's no meaningful evidence, there's a concerning lack of safety data of ivermectin, when in fact they were the #1 promoters of ivermectin back in the late 80s in the use of in Africa and in South America. So why is this so? So there have been tweets about it. This is from the local head of Merck, and claims that the level of evidence has not come up to standards, and the people at the frontline COVID-19 critical care says it's 100% false. People are dying, but Merck wants more money. And then we have this news. We did find out that Merck has a little brown pill that could transform the fight of COVID. This is not ivermectin. They will be coming out with a new drug very soon. And the comment here is for Merck, this could be the billion-dollar question. It could be 1 billion or 10 billion product, depending on how the data turns out. So it's big money. And we see that there's a conflict of interest regarding their comment about ivermectin. However, we see this from the FDA for registering a drug as a DEU. You have to go through the eligibility criteria of the PSMID. Again, even our Department of Health has adopted PSMID clinical practice guidelines when guiding us with COVID-19 management. However, I note that the Philippine Society of Microbiology and Infectious Diseases is an incorporated company and has a conflict of interest. They are the author of the living clinical guidelines of the DOH and the FDA with some other people, of course. And I'm not saying that everyone there has a conflict of interest. I certainly believe that there's people of high moral standards at the PSMID. However, there's an unusual relationship of the FDA and the Department of Health with private entities that may have potential for conflicts of interest. PSMID is a non-government entity. In fact, Dr. Vergara is with the rank of USEC, is officially part of the steering committee of PSMID. And DOH has official relationships with other scientific groups like the Department of Science and Technology, HTAC, PCHRD, UPNIH, and why can't they use them instead? And finally, we have this. On August 24, our FDA declined to even specifically mandated government device to be regulated. They did not want to regulate this, but in fact, a face shield is part of the FDA devices that should be regulated. So this is the part of the Republic Act 9711, medical devices, as you can see. Face shield. And here is a comparison of the 3 tools preventing or treating COVID-19 in the Philippines. First, face shield, ivermectin, and vaccine. Safety. Face shield is unknown in community setting. We do not know how safe it is. Ivermectin, high safety, long-term in large numbers, 30 years, 3.7 billion doses given. Vaccine, retrieving short-term safety data so far, no long-term safety studies. Efficacy, unknown in community settings. Ivermectin, 4 randomized controlled trials, 83% in preventing COVID-19. 11 randomized controlled trials, 74% in early treatment. Vaccines, 50 to 90%. Each vaccine with a single RTC. Others are observational and yet to follow. Status, face shield is mandatory. You will be fined, you will be caught if you do not wear a face mask. Ivermectin, authorized for anti-parasite, but being prohibited due to registration issues with the FDA, DOH, PMA, and the PNP. And as you know, vaccines are under EUA. And finally, costs. These are the estimated costs, 70 pesos per month for ivermectin, 70 billion pesos for our budget. So prevention of disease is the most contentious, most income-generating reason why ivermectin is being demonized by big tech, big pharma, and big politics. Ivermectin is cheap. It is patent-free since 1996. Ivermectin is safe. Ivermectin will compete significantly on the long and short-term profit of all other treatment options. That's the smoking gun. Ivermectin is indeed the splendid gift from the earth, according to Professor Satoshi Imura, the co-discoverer of ivermectin and Nobel Prize winner. So we already know it's safe, but I will skip through all the data that shows it works. If you want to ask more about it, I can show this later. In Slovakia, in Czechoslovakia, in Mexico, in Uttar Pradesh, India, and Peru. A significant thing happened in Peru. They used it early in September. The numbers went down, and there was a change of precedent sometime in November. They stopped the use of ivermectin, and guess what happened? So it's a big laboratory. Summary, there's an unusual and highly negative response of the FDA and the DOH towards ivermectin and highly biased in favor of other tools against COVID-19. Number 2, we're in a national health emergency affecting thousands of lives and livelihood, and we have no drug or vaccine to prevent or treat 98% of the COVID-19 patients. Ivermectin is a safe and cheap drug. Ivermectin has shown an abundance of evidence and efficacy from the laboratory, clinical studies, worldwide, and real-world data. And I ask the Philippine government must allow the access, adapt for emergency use, and promote the use of ivermectin against COVID-19, both as prophylaxis and early treatment now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akbayani. Next to present, may we recognize Dr. Richard Nicolas, Clinical Professor in UPPGH. Dr. Nicolas, for your opening statement.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Chairman Mike, for the opportunity. I won't share any slides, I'll be brief. The reason why I'm here, as the introduction was presented a while ago, I am not an infectious disease specialist, I'm a heart surgeon. The reason why I'm here is when the pandemic began, the operating rooms of cardiovascular were closed because all of our staff were redeployed to COVID areas. So I made my time more productive, just like Dr. Akbayani. I did some research. I am not an epidemiologist like Dr. Dalmachon, but what I did was I looked at the mechanism of action of drugs against COVID-19, and this is what I have found out. The reason why COVID-19 is a difficult disease to treat is because there are now recognized 2 phases of the disease. The first phase is the virologic phase, meaning to say, yung virus po nasa katawan, no, it causes all the symptoms that we have: fever, body aches, loss of taste, smell, cough. And this is why early treatment and prophylaxis is extremely important. And this is where also the infectious disease specialists also are very valuable, because this is where all the fight against the virus needs to happen. You need to give medications that work and are available readily and easily deployed. Kung hindi natin gagamitin ang virologic phase, Mr. Chairman, the second phase, many patients who eventually die enter the second phase of the disease. The second phase of the disease is no longer caused by the virus. It is caused by an overactive immune system. Dito ko binuhos yung attention ko kasi nakikita ko lahat ng mga colleagues ko, ang dami kong colleagues na namatay. I lost two very good colleagues, one in surgery, one in cardiology. And the two professors of ours in the UP were also lost in the very early stages of the pandemic. So I looked at the mechanism of action of this immunologic phase, and I found one drug that has finished a phase 3 double-blind randomized control trial in the US. It is now undergoing evaluation by the US FDA for approval against COVID, by Health Canada, by the UK MHRA, and Brazil Regulatory Office. This drug is called leronlimab. What leronlimab does, it's a humanized monoclonal antibody that stops the initiation of the immunologic phase and can prevent death. The reason why I'm here also is because I want to put into the attention the body that in as early as April of 2020, this particular treatment was included in the PSMID evaluation for possible treatment of severe to critical COVID. But unfortunately, it no longer is even mentioned in their guidelines. And I really want to point the fact that the Philippine FDA, dito, Mr. Chairman, I will give credit where credit is due. The Philippine FDA has allowed the use of leronlimab under compassionate special permit. The limitation nga lang po ng compassionate special permit is that when a patient in critical na po yung pasyente at mag-apply po yung doktor, yung FDA will, like Yusek Domingo said, no, it will take 24 to 48 hours. Many times, to the credit of Yusek Domingo, many times it's even within 24 hours we already get approval from the Philippine FDA. But this is where the problem lies. Once we get approval, we can only request the drug to be brought here from the US only upon approval. And that takes 3 days. Buti na lang po, we're trying to create an agreement with our national carrier, Philippine Airlines, to be the carrier of this drug to the Philippines, making it available as long as the flights are available within a day. And I would also like to tell the board, the committee, that this drug is also available, has been used here in the Philippines with several patients already, and has shown remarkable benefit even in the most critical and even the most near-death patients. So I'd like to thank Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank for the time to present. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. The main concern really for leronlimab is its availability for patients requiring it immediately. So thank you again. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Before I proceed, I'd like to recognize the members present: DS Rosemary Arenas, Representative Carlos Sarate, Deputy Majority Leader Yul Nieto Servo, and Minority Leader Caraps Paduano. Next to give her opening statement is Qualibet Testing Services, Pinky Tobiano. You're recognized.
Thank you so much. Yes, Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Chairman, for this opportunity. I'm chemist Pinky Tobiano, and I'm the president of all the Testing Laboratory Association in the Philippines. And one of our challenges now is how can we help assist the FDA to expedite all the CPRs, especially for drugs that are COVID-related. As you can see, third-party testing lab like Qualibet will be very advantageous to work hand in hand with the FDA, especially now during the pandemic. We know that not all the analysts in FDA, the chemists, are really going to work. For the third-party lab, we can help check the purity and the other analytical procedure, even the impurities that will help expedite the procedure. A third-party lab will also be beneficial to help Filipino pharmaceutical company, because a third-party lab, our analysis are unbiased, and all the analysts are licensed chemists and pharmacists helping the Filipino consumers and for the safety. So again, we're working hand in hand with the FDA, allow the third-party lab to help you hasten the analysis of potency and other tests to be able to serve the COVID situation right now. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and to everyone else, good morning.
Thank you, Ms. Tobiano. We will now proceed with the interpellations from our members. We will recognize interpellators on a first-to-register basis. You have 20 minutes to ask your questions, and the answers, including comments, manifestations made, will be counted to the allotted time. The first to register is the Deputy Speaker, B.H. Herrera. You have the floor, DSBH.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yung tanong ko po is for FDA, Yusek. Through you, Mr. Chair, yung sa DEU natin, how wide can we make this? Para naman, kasi ang understanding ko naman dyan, it's important that we make all medicines available and accessible. Total, doctors din naman ang magdedesisyon kung ano ang gagamitin nila for a particular patient. I don't think we should limit it. But of course, kayo po yung expert dyan, but we heard also all the others. Can we already widen the drugs for emergency use para maraming available na pumasok sa ating bansa? Like yung sinasabi ni Dr. Nicolas kanina, yung leronlimab, na nabigyan nyo na namang CSP. So ano po ba ang posibilidad nito, Yusek?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Madam Congresswoman. Yun nga po, actually pinalawak na nga namin to the living guidelines para mas maraming grupo na gumagawa katulad po ng UPNIH, yung HTAC, kasama dyan, at saka para pwede po nilang maisama doon sa living guidelines at maaral para po ma-increase natin sa DEU. Of course, we are exploring possibilities. Totoo po yun sinabi ni Dr. Dalmacion sa Pilipinas kasi Mr. Chairman, wala tayong batas doon for emergencies, no? Ang ating pong batas, yung RA 9711, parang iniisip niya lagi tayong nasa regular na everyday activities na wala pong emergency sa Pilipinas. And in fact, the only executive order that allows us for the EUA is the EO-121 of the President. Kaya po nakakabigay kami ng EUA sa ating mga bakuna. Pero meron naman pong alam kong pending na meron pong House at sa Senate po merong proposed bill that will give us more flexibility during the emergencies, and we really will support this, no. Kailangan po talaga ng FDA ng mas flexibility lalo na pag panahon ng emergency, and support the local pharmaceutical industry. I completely agree with that, Madam Congressman, no. Pero yun nga po, pwede po naman natin tingnan kung paano i-expand yung DEU. As of now, in-expand po natin siya to the living guidelines na maraming grupo ang kasama, and I hope that more groups will be able to join it para po maisama doon sa guidelines, yung living recommendations po pala, hindi pa siya guidelines na, no? Para kahit recommendation lang po, pwede na nating isama sa DEU.
So can CDCPH also be part of that, Mr. Chair? Through you, Mr. Chair, Yusek.
Well, I will, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I would ask po kung yung sa living guidelines, kung yung living recommendations, the committee, how other groups will be able to join. Kasi po hindi siya under FDA, but we will make queries on how other groups may be represented.
Yeah, kasi ako, Yusek, I believe, thank you. Kasi dati limited tayo sa PSMID, kaya I've been harping on this from 1 month na yata akong kulit ng kulit. Lawakan niyo yung scope, lawakan niyo yung scope. And I thank you for acting immediately. I think kayo ni Yusek Berhere ang lagi ko tinatawagan na bakit PSMID lang, marami namang iba. So I thank you na nilalawakan niyo to. Pero sa akin kasi, kung merong katulad yan, sinasabi ko sa'yo kanina, yung conclusions naman ng PSMID, puro lack of material evidence. Pero sinama natin sa DEU. Kasi kung may pinch of hope tayo na ito ay pwede sa COVID, then why not make it available? Total, at the end of the day, it's the doctors who will decide what to use. I hope we could look into that, Yusek.
Yes, ma'am. Pero yun lang, explain ko lang po si si Lopinovirr ritonavir at saka si tocilizumab. Kaya po namin sinama sa DEU. Actually, hindi po dahil sa COVID. Hindi po sila approved for COVID until now. No? Kaya lang nga, nung sinama siya ng PISMID sa guidelines, ginamit siya ng mga doktor for COVID. Ang problema po, yung mga may juvenile rheumatoid arthritis ang nawalan ng gamot ng tocilizumab. Kaya po binigyan namin ng mabilis na way para makaregister sila para po yung mga rheumatoid arthritis patients magkaroon ng gamot. Pati po yung Lopinovirr ritonavir, nagka-problem po yung HIV patients natin kasi nung masama siya sa PISMID guidelines, biglang ginamit ng mga doktor for COVID-19 at nawalan ng supply for our HIV patients. Pero hanggang ngayon po, hindi po sila approved for COVID-19 sa Pilipinas. Wala pa po tayong approved for COVID-19 sa Pilipinas.
So in that respect, can you look at leronlimab and then ivermectin para maisama dito sa DEU? Kasi apparently, hirap din sila makapasok. Tapos wala tayong pharmaceutical industries pa na who can have it accredited as soon as possible. Can we include this both in the list?
Yes, so I think actually I was speaking to this with the Director of Drugs, si Director Joyce Runay nga, kasi sabi ko nga parang hilaw siya na CPR, hilaw na DEU. But I think that we'll be meeting this afternoon and they have a proposal and I would like to see it. Kung paano nga po natin mapapabilis. I mean, we know that it is not yet, I mean, we are not anti-ivermectin, no? Just to be clear. Ang FDA po, anti lang kami dun sa mga unregulated, unregistered. Ayaw lang namin ng unregistered at saka yung dati kasi na yung mga veterinary products na baka ipasa sa tao, yun lang po ang ayaw namin. No? So as long as they have naman the basic requirements for safety and efficacy and quality, tutulungan din naman po namin yan kasi alam naman po namin na it is an under investigation for the treatment of COVID-19.
Opo, sana tignan po natin yung sa DEU nila, Yusek. And then number 2, yung sa EUA, yung sinasabi ni Dr. Dalmason kanina with regards to our definition of EUA to the definition that's being used in the US, and ano pong comment niyo doon?
Madam, Mr. Chair, Madam Congresswoman, it's very similar. Yung EUA, ano po natin, pinakita po ni Ma'am Jody kanina, no, may similarities, although may konti pong limitations yung atin, kasi atin, executive order lang po, yung sa US talagang batas. No? Kaya kailangan po talaga natin ng batas later on para ma-institutionalize na talagang every time magkakaroon po ng epidemic or ng emergency, meron tayong batas. Ito talagang very particular and only for COVID-19. Yun po yung pagkakaiba niya.
You mentioned there's an existing House bill filed. Would you know kung ano House bill ito para matignan po namin?
Hanapin ko po, ma'am, tas padala ko sa inyo. Kasi alam ko po sa Senate meron na. Hanapin ko po kung may House counterpart na. Please,
para po magawan po natin ng paraan. And then, my question is, hindi po ba pwedeng i-part sa EUA pag phase 1 and 2 clinical trials na? Kasi ganun din naman yung requirements sa CSP. Can't we do the same for EUA?
Well, ang kailangan po for EUA is you're at least in the middle of phase 3 trial. Kailangan po nakita na medyo malawakan. No? Kasi yung phase 1 and phase 2, they really deal mostly with safety at saka yung dosing schedule po. No? So sa phase 3 pa natin kasi nakikita yung efficacy niya. Pero kahit kalagitnaan ng phase 3, basta po meron ng enough data to show efficacy, pwede na po mag-apply for EUA.
Okay. Yusek, what about the national guidelines? Kasi parang yung national guidelines na ginagamit natin before, mas madaling mag-apply for our local pharma kasi yung dun sa ASEAN. Ang sa akin naman, of course, we want to honor our ASEAN agreement. Pero in time of pandemic, baka naman pwede tayong mag-pause dito para lang mas mapabilis at matulungan natin yung local pharma natin, especially for out-of-stock drugs and for COVID pandemic or kahit seemingly na pwedeng COVID pandemic na gamot.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Madam Congress. No, I agree with you completely on this. No, of course, yung ASEAN po kasi talagang may harmonization tayo. But during this epidemic, we will take a look closely. And I really, sila, Mr. Porte, alam naman po nila yan, tsaka ng mga nila Authority Filipino, alam naman, I've always wanted to support our local industry and make it easy for them. Dahil pag po talagang ganitong panahon na wala nang gustong mag-export ng gamot, nahihirapan po talaga tayo sa supply kung wala tayong manufacturing. So yes, ma'am, we'll take a very, very close look at this to make it easier for our local manufacturers.
Yusek, kasi yung ASEAN naman, it's just a DOH Department Administrative Order.
DSBH, I think she lost her connection. So, siguro we will come back to her when she rejoins. Let's first move to the next interpellator, DS Marcoleta. DS Marcoleta, are you online?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Siguro we will come
Mr.
back
Chair?
to, yes.
Ako na ba, Mr. Chair?
Wala na si DSBH. Siguro kayo na muna.
Salamat,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, kay Director Domingo muna. Pasensya na, Director Domingo, ikaw lang naman talaga yung aming inaasahan na makasasagot sa ating mga katanungan ngayon. Alam namin marami kang gawain, pero pagpasensyahan mo na kami sapagkat bilang mga karaniwang tao, marami kaming dapat na malaman at maitanong alang-alang na rin dun sa ikagiginhawa ng kalooban ng maraming mga kababayan natin. Director General, alam po ba ninyo yung Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering ay nagkaroon po sila ng summary ng data at analysis doon sa ivermectin na nakapost sa kanilang website www.paase.org.
Opo, actually kasama yata po dyan si dating Secretary Dairit at ina-update naman po niya ako sa kanilang mga impormasyon po.
Salamat po. Kung ganoon ay alam po ninyo na yung PAASE ay nag-conduct din ng online survey patungkol sa ivermectin at ito ay dinaluhan ng mahigit 500 na mga medical doctors. At ang resulta po nito ay nagpakita na mas marami palang medical doctors ang pabor sa paggamit ng ivermectin as a preventive treatment drug kesa doon sa mga doktor na nag-o-oppose dito. Tama po ba yung survey result, Dr. Domingo?
Nakita ko rin po yung survey result po na yun. Pinadala rin po sa akin, Mr. Chair, Mr. Congressman.
At Director Domingo, ang British Ivermectin Recommendation Development o tinatawag na BIRD ay nag-i-sponsor ng International Ivermectin for COVID Conference sa Abril 24 hanggang 25. Ito po ay kauna-unahang conference na nagpo-focus sa paggamit ng ivermectin as a prophylaxis and treatment for COVID-19. At sinasabi po doon sa kanilang brochure, Director Domingo, medical experts around the world will join together to present the very latest and real-world research on the repurposing of this safe and reliable drug that has the potential to transform global efforts to fight the pandemic. Sino po sa ating mga doktor ang opisyal na makikidalo dito sa ganitong klaseng konferensya, Director Domingo?
Well, sa amin po sa FDA, magpapadala rin po kami ng mag-observe at saka pwede pong makinig. Meron naman po kami mga doktor dito po sa Center for Drug Regulation namin para po marinig din nila yung mga ebidensya po na ipapakita doon.
Napag-usapan na po ba ninyo kung sino yung dadalo? Sapagkat alam ko po, napaka-importante nito, kauna-unahan pala na pagpupulungan ang paggamit nito at pag-repurpose ng gamot na ito. At gusto lang naming malaman ang kahandaan ninyo kung talagang kayo po ay talagang nagbabantay sa kaganapan ng gamot na ito. Inaakala ko na sa ngayon pa lang ay alam na ninyo kung sino yung dadalo at ano-ano ang dapat ninyong matukoy na partisipasyon dito. Alang-alang dun sa pagkuha natin ng napakalaking impormasyon tungkol dito.
Opo, pero isa lang naman po yung head ng aming clinical research po dito, yung doktora po namin. Siya po yung tumitingin po ng ating mga clinical trial drugs at papa-attend din po natin sila para po ma-update din po sila sa mga madidiscuss sa meeting na ito.
Sa nangyayari po sa ating daigdig ngayon, Director Domingo, na kung saan ay talagang halos lahat ng bansa, kung hindi man lalong-lalo na pala yung mga bansang katulad natin, ay mukhang lugmok na lugmok sa paglaban dito sa pandemic na ito. Kayo po ba'y naniniwala na ang ating bansa ay nasa giyera na kung pag-uusapan na yung paglaban sa COVID-19, Director Domingo?
Talaga pong tayo ay nasa public health emergency, talaga pong sa amin pong mga nagtatrabaho sa kalusugan, ito na po talaga ang pinakamalaking emergency na naabot natin sa atin pong henerasyon na ito.
Pwede ba nating gamiting akmang salita yung nasa giyera na tayo, Director Domingo?
Ay hindi po kasi ako sundalo, no? Sa amin po we consider it a public health emergency. Hindi ko po kasi alam yung technicality ng giyera.
Director Domingo, gumagamit lang ako ng metaphor sapagkat kumbaga sa giyera, ay ang ating bansa talaga ay kinakailangang labanan natin ito sapagkat wala namang ligtas dito Lahat tayo ay may panganib tungkol dito. So bakit naman nahihirapan ka na gamitin natin o ikumpara natin sa salitang giyera para lang makita natin ang urgency nung paglaban natin dito sa pandemya?
Opo, talaga pong napaka-urgent naman po. At tama po kayo, talagang lahat po tayo ay pwedeng tamaan po nitong sakit na ito.
So kahit hindi po kayo sundalo, Director, pwede nating sabing giyera na po ito kung ang pag-uusapan ay yung paglaban sa COVID-19.
Well, opo, I guess figuratively speaking, talaga pong we are at war against COVID-19.
Salamat po. Figuratively, we're at war with COVID-19, Director General Domingo. Sa makatwid, pagka po nasa giyera tayo, yung mga peacetime guidelines natin, yung mga policies, kung minsan ay ini-improvise po natin, ina-adjust natin, nagiging flexible po tayo, sapagkat hindi po pwedeng gamitin natin yung peacetime guidelines sapagkat emergency po ang ating kalagayan. Tama po yun, Director.
Well, yun nga po ang inihiling namin kasi po ang batas ng FDA para po talagang walang emergency lagi, Kaya hinihiling po talaga namin sa lehislatura na talagang susuportahan po namin ng bigyan po ng mga kapangyarihan din ng FDA sa panahon po ng mga emergency para po magkaroon tayo ng konting flexibility sa ating regulation.
Bago pa po makagawa ng hakbang, kaukulang hakbang ang Kongreso, sapagkat kami po ay naka-break ngayon, Director Domingo, wala ba tayong kaparaanan para mag-improvise tayo? Kamukha halimbawa po, noong isang participant kanina, tinatanong niya bakit kung pag-uusapan ay yung mga aplikasyon na nakabinbin sa inyong opisina, yung automatic renewal lamang po pala 381 na at yung revalidation lang 98. Lumilitaw po kasi, pasensya na po kayo, parang hindi namin nararamdaman yung emergency na nature nung pagbaka natin sa giyerang ito, Director. Can we not improvise? Kung ang pag-uusapan po, Director, meron po bang ethical violation halimbawa kung ako gusto kong gamitin yung ivermectin o kaya yung mga binabanggit pong mga gamot kanina, napakahirap bigkasin, remdesivir, tocilizumab, leronlimab, lopinavir, ritonavir. Meron po bang malalabag na ethical consideration dito o ethical value kung sakasakaling nanaisin ng isang pasyente? Katulad ko halimbawa, kailangan ko pong uminom na sapagkat parang halimbawa gusto ko nang gamitin yon. Total, yun naman na yung kagustuhan ko. At nakikita ko at sa nababasa ko rin po sa mga napakaraming mga brochures, yung risk na involved dito, kung meron man, ay parang mas marami po yung benepisyo. Yung benefits far outweigh the risk involved. Sa mga ganitong pagkakataon po, ito yung pinag-uusapan natin. Director Domingo, ang Zoom hearing po na ito ay nakatuon doon sa existing guidelines and policies po natin sa ngayon upang sa ganon ay maka-adapt tayo dito sa panganib na dala ng COVID-19. Pasensya na po, Director Domingo, kumbaga sa boxing, ang nararamdaman namin ngayon ni DS Atienza, alam kong nandyan po siya, parang ayaw po ninyong umakyat sa ring. At nung pag-akyat nyo sa ring, parang ayaw nyo nang sumuntok. At pati yung referee, parang ayaw ding gumalaw. Ang sabi nyo kanina, Director, pinalawak na ninyo. Gaano kalawak yung ginawa ninyong pagkukonsidera sa maraming guidelines na umiiral ngayon? Sabi po ninyo, exploratory or you are exploring possibilities. Pasensya na po, pero sa nararamdaman namin, talaga pong gusto namin matiyak kung gaano yung kakayahan ng FDA at kung sino mga ahensya ng pamahalaan ang meron ngayon para magano po tayo, para mag-improvise tayo. Kumbaga nasa infantry na po, nasa labanan na tayo. Kulang na po tayo sa gamit, kulang na po tayo sa mga armas. Wala po ba tayong gagawin at mananatili po ba tayong naasa doon sa conventional rules para lamang sana ma-maximize po natin sa ilalim po ng kahirapan ng bansa natin at sa ilalim po ng nananatiling provision natin. Ang iniisip lang po namin ngayon ay paano tayo makakatulong, paano tayo magiging flexible habang wala pa po kaming nagagawa sa House of Representatives sapagkat nasa break po kami. Yung existing guidelines po ba ay hindi po tayo po pwedeng mag-improvise? Makakalabag po ba tayo? Makakagawa po ba tayo ng krimen kung sakasakaling mag-improvise man lang tayo? Katulad po ng inihingi ng marami. Madaliin na lamang yung pagbili ng mga gamot nito na alam nilang maaari nating gamitin talaga. Sa ibang bansa po, sinasabi na ginagamit na talaga ito. Yung pong binanggit kanina na hapon na kasamang nakatuklas, nagkaroon ng Nobel Prize pala rito. Sinabi niya ito ay isang wonder drug. Kasama na po sa penicillin at saka sa aspirin. Ito pong isang doktor sa Amerika yata, Paul Marek po ang pangalan, MD, FCCM, FCCP, founder po ng FLCCC. Alam po niyo lahat ng organisasyon ito. Ang sabi po niya, ang ivermectin po is a safe drug that is exceedingly cheap. Para po sa mga ordinaryong mga mamamayan katulad po namin, Dr. Domingo, nakikita natin ang mga testimonies po ng napakaraming mga doktor din, kagaya ng kasama natin ngayon. Hindi po ba natin pwedeng madaliin ang proseso para pagtugma-tugmain natin yung obserbasyon ng isang grupo na ayaw sa ivermectin at saka kung ano-ano pang kaklase nitong gamot para mapadali po natin kung ano ang gagawin. Halimbawa po, yung sa ivermectin na lang, nasaan po ba yung diferensya nung nagsasabing hindi pwedeng gamitin yung ivermectin sapagkat ito'y para sa hayop lang? Kaiba yun ng mga isang grupo naman na nagsasabi, kailangan natin gamitin kasi meron namang prophylaxis property ito eh. nakikita ko po na ang diferensya lamang ng dalawang argumento na ito ay yung pong sample o yung homogeneity o yung kasi po yung laban sa laban sa ivermectin, ang gusto po nilang studies na kailangan na ma-include doon sa meta-analysis na sinasabi nila ay yung pong mga parang pinakapuro at heterogeneous selection para sa meta-analysis. Doon naman po sa gustong gamitin ng ivermectin, ang sinasabi nila, pwede na po nating tanggapin yung mga heterogeneous selection ng RCTs. Ito po yung randomized clinical tests at marami pang observational studies. So, sa harap po ng dalawang nagbabanggaan na pananaw na yun, Dr. Domingo, ay kailangan na po siguro nating madaliin. Yun lang naman po ang ating gustong sabihin dito. Kesa po pumasok po yung napakaraming mga teorya pa rito, the big pharma, maraming kumikita rito ng ganito. Iwasan na po natin siguro ito, alalayan na lang natin at alalahanin na lang natin, kapwa natin po kinakailangang magmadali sapagkat buhay po ang pinag-uusapan dito, buhay po ng ating mga mamamayan. Maraming salamat po, Dr. Domingo, at maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair, sa panahon.
Mr. Chair, opo, gusto ko lang pong i-assure si Congressman na talaga pong mamadaliin namin yan dahil kami po, hindi naman kami doon sa pro at saka hindi naman po kami sa anti-ivermectin. Basta naman po yung at registrable po talaga ang ivermectin dito sa ating sa Pilipinas. Dahil lumang gamot naman yan, matagal na lang po walang nagre-rehistro. Pero yung kung ano nga nag-apply ngayon, basta po baka po sila agad, meet po sila doon sa requirements natin agad, i-register po natin. But in the meantime, habang wala pa po, pinapayagan po natin yung paggamit niya through compassionate permit para lang po sigurado na kung saan nanggaling yung gamot. Yun lamang naman po kaya nire-rehistro sa amin. Pero mamadaliin naman po namin yan at basta po talagang ma-assure naman po tayo doon sa minimum requirements po natin for quality, ay papasa po natin agad yan.
Salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, DS Marcoleta. Next, we will come back to DS BH, who was cut off. She has 12 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Pasensya na po at nag-brown out po dito. Nawala po ako. Anyway, I usually the to continue. I don't know if the Department of Health also is here. Yun naman pong ASEAN adoption natin is just an administrative order of DOH. So we can easily undo that the order or mag-post tayo doon para we can go back to the national guidelines. Total tayo naman po ang nagsaad, di ba? Ang FDA din ang gumawa ng national guidelines na yan. I suggest we go back to that, especially for mga COVID medicines at yung mga out-of-stock medicines po natin. Can we have an assurance, Yusek Domingo, that you look into this and we can do this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Madam Congresswoman, I will discuss this with the Department of Health at papaaral po natin yung especially during the time of emergencies.
Yes, kasi nasa emergency situation naman po tayo and the national guidelines naman won't sacrifice the quality, the safety, and the efficacy kasi dati na nating ginagamit na guidelines po ito. Pinahirapan lang natin nung nagka-ASEAN tayo, same product, pero naging times 3 yung documentary requirement. Now, yung isa pang nating concern, paano yung first generic drug product? I think isa itong nagiging concern. Although if we use the national guidelines, hindi natin magiging problema yata masyadong first generic drug product. What can we do about that?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, very technical po. Si Director Joyce Sirunay ng Center of Drugs.
Anyway, no, sa akin, I don't want naman na to, pakitignan lang yon. Pero if we're going to use the national guidelines, naman ang akin lang pinapadali ko lang kasi ang pagpasok ng drugs dito sa ating bansa, total, hindi naman porkit nasa DEU yan, ay gagamitin lahat yan, di ba? It still depends on the doctor kung ano ang i-recommenda niya, depending on the need of the patient. And then yung mga green lanes po natin or fast lanes, sana medyo katulad nga nung sinabi nila, mas malinaw kung ano yung pwedeng dumaan sa green lane or fast lane. Sana, pero katulad nga nun, kayo po ba nag-agree that we can use the national guidelines at present for this pandemic?
Opo, basta naman ma-check ko lang po yung legal mandate po kasi sa AO, kung AO naman, pwede naman po sigurong i-pause yun for certain condition. But I will just take a good look. But I do agree po no, na during emergency, dapat yung local manufacturers natin ay tulungan natin.
Opo, kasi I understand meron daw tayong 5 out of stock na isa dito yung Medazolam. Totoo po ba yun?
Ano
Yun
po?
lang bang isang sedative natin para sa intubation ng mga COVID patients?
Well, actually po, it's used for a lot of patients po, mga sedative, tsaka ginagamit ng mga anesthesiologists po natin yan sa lahat ng operasyon po.
So baka dapat ito din pabilisin natin yung pasok sa ating bansa kung out of stock na tayo. And I sabi po ng local pharma natin, they can produce this and they can produce other drugs. Tulungan po natin yung local pharma natin, Yusek Domingo, as in now's the time. We have to be self-sufficient. Kasi hindi tayo priority eh. Katulad ng tocilizumab, nagmamakaawa tayo na bigyan tayo ng kahit katiting na allocation kasi nauubos. Hindi tayo priority ng other countries. So we have to make our country self-sufficient, and the only way to do that is to really support our local pharmaceutical industries. Can we count on you on that, Yusek Domingo?
Yes, definitely, ma'am. Mr. Chair, I will definitely look into it and then see how we can work this with the Department of Health. And I will talk to the Secretary of Health personally about it.
Maraming salamat po. Kasi we're also looking at Bayanihan 3 kung paano tayo pwedeng magbigay ng soft loans or subsidies to our local pharma also. Kasi kailangan natin to eh. We need to produce our own medicines. Besides, we also have our third-party testing facilities na who can test naman, di ba, yung safety and efficacy and quality ng product. Mr. Chair, through you, I'd just like to ask Ms. Pinky, ano po ba yung difference ng animal ivermectin sa human ivermectin? I mean, ano yung in terms of delikado ba yan pag na-ingest ng tao, yung sa hayop? How serious will the injury be to a person?
Okay, thank you so much, Congressman DH. Actually, the human ivermectin and the veterinary ivermectin, parehong molecule lang po ang ginagamit. The only difference is the process of manufacturing or how it's being done. At malalaman ho lang natin, ang ivermectin difference is pinatest ho natin ang impurities based sa USP. So meron hong parameters na pag-test para malaman natin yung impurity. Ito ay ginagawang pagsusuri, either it's vet grade or human grade. We test for the isomers of ivermectin, ang limit of alcohol, at saka tinetest ko rin natin ang limit of heavy metal. So actually, I think, meron naman siyang limit na pwedeng ma-ingest. So actually, yung vet at saka yung pharma na molecule ng ivermectin, pareho lang po yan. Ang pagkakaiba lang po is the process of manufacturing, and malalaman mo lang natin if we check the impurities sa mga USP pharmacopoeia. So for the safety, I guess, pag na lumabas ng third-party test or laboratory test, malalaman natin kung safe po siya o hindi. Basta pumasa lang po siya sa USP monograph.
So, Ms. Pinky, if I ingest an animal-grade ivermectin, what is the harm that can happen to me?
Okay, if you ingest an animal-grade ivermectin, first thing we have to do is we have to check the animal grade that you ingested. If pumasa naman siya sa monograph ng human, I believe there won't be any much detriment to your body as long as pumasa siya sa USP ng human. Kasi uulitin ko, pareho lang po ang molecule na ivermectin na ginagamit sa hayop at saka sa human. Ang pagkakaiba lang po is how they manufacture it.
Pero hindi siya magiging effective kasi mababa ang dose, in other words.
Kasi I believe, pharmacologically, the ivermectin works on the body weight. Kasi pag sa hayop po, like isang maliit na tuta, syempre mas maliit po ang dosage. Tayong human, an average of 40 to 70 kilos, mas malaki ang kailangan natin, ivermectin. Yan po base sa USP pharmacopoeia.
Okay, pero syempre, importante pa rin, we have to use the human grade, di ba? Hindi naman yung animal grade. I'm just making sure na pag kunwari nga, dahil sa nagkakalat dito, may nainom, baka mamaya maging delikado para sa mamamayang Pilipino. Thank you. Last na lang po, Yusek, you already sent me Senate Bill 2024. I'm still checking kung may counterpart tayo dito sa Congress. With this po ba, may institutionalize natin yung EUA para mas nilipin tayo in times of emergencies and calamities?
Yes, ma'am. Yun po yung ano natin kasi wala tayong batas na that allows flexibilities during emergencies. Sa ngayon yung EO natin at yung EO COVID-19 lang. I mean for future po, for future emergencies and epidemics.
Hindi, but do you think now we have to fast track it? Kasi we could ask the president naman na i-sign siya kaagad as what's this emergency na yung para mabilis nating mapasa. Do you need this now in this time of pandemic para mas malinaw ang definition ng EUA?
Opo, makakatulong po talaga, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, Madam
Okay.
Congresswoman.
Sige. So we'll look into how we could also file this bill here in Congress. So basically yun lang naman, Mr. Chair, and sana po USEC, yung local pharma natin, ulitin ko, hanggang nandiyan po sila dahil nalulungkot ako bumaba from 36 to 32% na lang ang reliance natin. 32% reliance on local pharma is very low. We need to be self-sufficient and I hope we could, looking forward, we have to really strengthen them now. At para pag nagkaroon tayo ng ganitong sitwasyon, ready po tayo, gamot ng Pilipino para sa Pilipino. Kasi ngayon nag-i-import po sila eh. Mas madali daw pong mag-import sa labas kaysa magpa-register sa ating sariling bansa. So let's do something about it. We're willing to work with you, USEC, kung ano man ang dapat gawin. That's why we have this hearing. But for now, please look into the expanding the DEU, and I hope we could include those na napaka-importante like yung leronlimab and ivermectin and other COVID-related products, yung mga out-of-stock products natin, and look at the national guidelines. We can go back to that and post the ASEAN muna. So that's all, Yusek Domingo. Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank you for expanding not just TSMID pero yung buo na. So sana lang yung lahat pa ng iba natin para may outcome naman po itong hearing na to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, DSPH. Next to interpellate is the Honorable Mike Defensor. Representative Defensor, are you online?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you po. Mr. Chair, if I may share screen.
Yes.
Okay.
You have 20 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, unahin ko muna tong okay. Mr. Chair, ito po yung nangyayari ngayon sa MDCVIR, if I may. Ito ho, si Sugar Joy Marcelino, San Lazaro Hospital. Ang kanya pong kinuha ay Jubilant Remdesivir, 3,000 pesos. Ang binayaran po niya, 10,852 pesos. Yan po sa San Lazaro Hospital, Manila. Kay Fernando Lopez po, ang kanyang price per shot, 11,000. Hindi po indicated kung anong brand. Dito po sa... ito po. Kay Fernando Lopez, kung titingnan nyo ho, meron silang ginawa pa na kasulatan na pumipirma para ho dito sa paggamit ng Remdesivir. Si Mark Jomar, EGAM sa Pagadian City Medical Center, ang kanyang ginamit ay si Premi Remdesivir. Ang original price, 1,950 pesos. Ang kanya po ay bali 9,500 per shot. I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I'll just fix the... So, Mr. Chair, ito po yung binayaran nila. Yan po ang ginagamit yung si Premi. Dun sa sinabi yung kanina pong si Mr. Lopez. Ito naman po, Ortega sa Westlake Medical Center. Ang ginamit nila COVID-4. 2,268 pesos original price from India. Ang binayaran niya is 12,000 pesos per shot. Fernando Tordanes sa San Isidro Hospital, walang indicated price, pero ang binayaran po niya 27,300 pesos per shot. Ansoriano, si Premi din po ginamit. Ang binayaran niya is 14,625. Ang original price po is 1,950 pesos per shot. World City Medical Center. Yan po yung mga resibo. Katindig, ang binayaran po niya 3,000, ang original price po, Hetero Remdesivir, 3,490, 7,762 pesos. Ito ho, no brand indicated. Ang binayaran niya per shot, 12,320 pesos. Sa Binangonan Lakeview Hospital. Yan po yung mga resibo. Gary Lacon, yung Eva Pharma, galing ho yan ng Egypt. Original price, at least doon sa nakikita natin, 6,200. Ang binayaran niya per shot, 48,241 sa Commonwealth Hospital and Medical Center. Yan po yung Eva Pharma. No brand indicated. Liberty Berlan, ang patient sa Manila East Medical Center, 15,000 pesos per shot. Total bill po niya, no? Umabot to sa 100,000. Jong Zamora, Supreme powder, 15,000 per shot. 1,950 ang original price sa India. June Fernandez, si Premi din, 15,249 pesos per shot sa Las Piñas Doctors Hospital. Pansinin niyo po, no? Yung kanilang si Premi is not for distribution in the US, Canada, or EU. Dito sa atin, and many third world countries, pinapayagan. Ito pa ho yung mga ilan. Arnold Alonso, 1,950. Leticia Tapang, 3,046 ang original. Ang pangalan naman po nito, Bemsivir. Sa India rin po ata to, 9,940 pesos per shot. Pero ang original price, 3,426. Again, in Magati, in World City Medical Center, 1,950, 14,000 ang binayaran. So, before I present my next slide, Mr. Chair, I just like to ask, hindi po to problema ng FDA. Dahil ito po ay policy, hindi po si Sec Domingo, ano to. Ito po yung protocol na ginawa ng Department of Health. May I know from the Department of Health, ano po yung pinanggalingan nito? Kasi ang WHO po, sabi nyo sa ivermectin, hindi supported ng WHO. Ito po as early as November, sinabi na ng WHO, hindi na pwede. And yet you allow our people to buy remdesivir, and the hospitals to use remdesivir. In fact, sinasabihan po mga doktor, and I have several friend doctors are saying, pag hindi natin sinundan yung protocol, hindi kayo makakolekta sa PhilHealth. So may I know from the Department of Health, hindi po kay Dr. Domingo, yes, hindi kay Dr. Domingo, but Department of Health, kung bakit po nagkaganito? Nawala.
DOH, representative of the DOH, may you please answer the question of Representative Defensor.
Parang iniwan na tayo, Mr. Chair, ng DOH, ah.
Mukha nga. DOH.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please proceed.
This is Dr. Guerrero po sa Pharmaceutical Division. So, totoo po yan kasi lahat ngayon ng COVID-19 drugs investigational, and as Yusek Domingo has already said, last year po talagang compassionate use basis itong paggamit po ng mga investigational drugs including COVID-19. So, as of now, the latest Living CPG guidelines, meron na pong conditional recommendation on the use of remdesivir for a target set of patients. On the prices, sir, that has been brought to us, to our attention, and what the Department of Health is doing, naglalagay kasi tayo ng suggested retail price for COVID-19 drugs. And right now, we have issued a revised suggested retail price for remdesivir because a lot of patients have been complaining. Ang quotation po na binigay sa amin ng industry is that the wholesale price is anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000. So nag-revise po kami ng SRP up to 8,000. So pakisumbong na lang po sa amin itong mga ospital na nagpapatong para po maimbestigahan. Pero po ang remdesivir po, meron po siyang conditional recommendation for a subset of patients who may benefit.
Dr. Guerrero, Mr. Chair, if I may ask Dr. Guerrero, Dr. Guerrero, ang WHO nagsabi, di ba sa ivermectin na sinabi nila, ongoing clinical studies, hindi pa to tapos. Pero dito po sa remdesivir, nagsabi sila, totally, in all cases, we do not recommend the use of remdesivir.
Sa WHO Solidarity Trial, interim analysis po yun, partial analysis, but when we review the evidence together with the Living CPG group, meron pong subset of patients na pwede po potentially mag-benefit. It's not for all severe COVID-19 patients, but...
Dr. Guerrero, if I may cut you, we were part of the Solidarity Trial. Based on that Solidarity Trial, ang lumabas po doon sa kanilang recommendation, hindi pwede. Wala ho silang conditional. Very clear on WHO, and I can even get the actual statement of WHO.
Napaka-equivocal kasi nung evidence then even for remdesivir. We can provide you the latest Living CPG.
Okay. The Living CPG came from the PISMID, tama po ba? Philippine Society of, ano po yun?
It originally was being done kasi yung treatment guidelines for COVID-19, noong 2020 po nagsimula ito own initiative po ng PISMID. But we recognize that we really need to have up-to-date evidence on the COVID-19 treatment, and therefore, in partnership with the Department of Science and Technology, nagkaroon po ng commissioning dun sa Living CPG, but it is now composed of multi-disciplinary groups. Hindi na lang po ito PISMID.
Opo, pero hindi niyo po binago yung recommendation niyo based on the WHO. And if I may, Dr. Guerrero, before you react, papakita ko na po yung isa pang slide. Ito po. Before you react, Dr. Guerrero, and if I just present this next slide. Okay. Yan po yung sinabi ng US FDA. Yung solidarity trial po nila, ay yung ginawa po nilang kanilang pag-check, ang pinayagan po lang nila ay Veklury. Dahil ang sinasabi nila, dapat kami lang, ito lang Veklury ang tinest, at hindi yung madaming iba-ibang mga remdesivir, which is happening now. Ang nandito po sa ating bansa, India, Bangladesh, Egypt. I do not know if Veklury is being sold in the country. That is why the US FDA allowed it. Ang existing nyo pong guidelines sa ngayon, you're claiming that you have with this the Department of Science and Technology, pero ito po ang existing ninyo. Adjunct interventions, ito po yung ginawa ninyo with PISMID. Sabi nyo, ang zinc, hindi pwede. Ang vitamin C, hindi pwede. There is insufficient evidence to recommend. There is insufficient evidence to recommend. And so on and so forth. Ngayon, remdesivir, sabi niya, we suggest against the use of remdesivir in patients. Ito po yung oxygen level. But, nilagay niyo po dito that you would want it used if the patient has less than 94% oxygen. Tocilizumab, pinayagan niyo rin po. Meron kayong qualification. Treatment, ano sabi nyo? Ivermectin, hindi pwede. Yung pong azithromycin, against din kayo. Existing policy nyo po yan, because you adopted the PISMID policy. Virgin coconut oil, there is no evidence, hindi pwede. Ibuprofen, hindi pwede. Linwa, hindi pwede. Sa vaccines po, and prophylactic intervention. Vitamin D, hindi. We recommend against. Zinc, we recommend against. Melatonin, we recommend against. Lahat po ng ginagawa ngayon sa Estados Unidos, na ito yung recommendation lahat kayo against. Technically, ang pinayagan nyo lang, tocilizumab at saka yung remdesivir. Galing po yan sa inyo. Sino pong sumulat dito? Cabaluna, Burog, and Bayona. These are very good people. But Dr. Guerrero, isa pong tanong, Mr. Chair, with your permission. Nag-full disclosure po ba yung mga yan sa inyo? Kung ano yung kanilang involvement?
Yes po, merong mga conflict of interest management policies po kami.
So is there a conflict of interest with the individuals involved?
Wala po. Wala silang
Meron po. Isa po dyan, galing sa AstraZeneca. Was working with AstraZeneca. And I do not know if you know that. But I will not anymore mention kasi irrelevant eh. Dapat lang naman mag-disclosure ka. And sa dami ng PISMI, dapat hindi nyo pinayagan siyang gumawa. One of them. Ano po yung emergency use authorization? This is also to call the attention of Dr. Domingo. Pagka may public health, katulad ng binanggit ni Dr. Dalmacion, payagan po natin. Lalo na po itong ivermectin because it is an approved drug with unapproved registration. Ito po yung pinirmahan ni Presidente. Ang isa lang po, kung gusto nating mapadali ito, ito naman po yung Compassionate Special Permit. Pinirmahan po ito ni Senator Flavier. Ang nakalagay po dito is that the patient is already terminally ill or seriously ill. And access to these products for patients is morally, socially, ethically justified. So, ibig sabihin, wala na siyang ibang cure, kundi yan na lang. So, parang mali din po naman na sinasabi natin ang ivermectin, pwede natin gamitin preventive, pwede makatulong sa initial stage, pero pag mamamatay na, doon mo lang papayagan. As different from a vaccine, from emergency use authorization, papayagan mo na siya talaga. Lalo pa ito dahil approved drug na to. Yung binanggit ni Dr. Dalmacion na ilang stages na ng safety, dumaan na po to. So ito po, ang executive order ni Presidente, madali naman itong baguhin, kay Secretary of Health kung gusto niya baguhin. Kasi ang isang problema lang ho naman dito is nakalagay dito sa Section 1 is that it should be a registered drug, no unregistered COVID-19 drug. But anyway, it is not, kung ayaw yung i-define ng ivermectin na unregistered COVID-19 drug, pwede nyo pa rin siyang bigyan ng emergency use authorization as an adjunct drug in helping COVID-19 patients. Lastly, ang Dr. Guerrero, are you still here?
Yes, sir. Nandito pa po.
Opo. Di ba po ang BioCare Life Sciences ang biggest distributor ng ivermectin? Kanya po yung Eva, tsaka yung Eva Pharma, tsaka yung Jubilant, yung Eva, Remdesivir, Jubilant Remdesivir.
I'm not familiar po with all of the distributors. Can I explain po yung mga current
mabilis lang, ma'am.
Yes.
Tapos na po to. Tingnan nyo ho to, UPPGH lang study group reunion, sila po yung nag-host. Pagkatapos po, ito may mga macho dancer pa. Nung annual convention ng Philippine Society for Microbiology, andyan din po sila. Sila mismo yung involved mismo sa negosyo. Bakit po sila kasama dito sa mga nagsusponsor? Pati reunion, nag-go-host. Ayan po, babalik ko. Parang maliho ata. Ayun po. So, Doktora, if you may react on the what I have shown.
O yung pag-sponsor po ito ng mga events, I think we have DOH FDA guidelines on the ethical promotion of products. Tinitignan din po ito ng Food and Drug Administration kasi may limits din yung kanilang spending on the support to the conventions of physicians, for example. So pwede rin po itong ibigay sa attention po ng Department of Health and FDA. Sir, if I may, dun sa supply po ng Remdesivir, totoo po na in the US, it is only Gilead who is supplying the product because it is under patent, but to provide the lower to middle income countries on generic affordable drugs. So they have issued voluntary licenses to some manufacturers who are generic manufacturers in India and Egypt. So ito po yung mga nagsusupply na authorized ngayon ng Food and Drug Administration.
Yes, Dr. Guerrero, but the point is, hindi na nga natin pinayagan ng WHO. Lumusot lang siya sa US FDA. Bakit ngayon? Ang napakagulo po ng DOH Pagdating sa ivermectin, sasabihin nyo hindi pwede. And yet, ang ivermectin hindi pa conclusive. Sasabihin nyo ngayon sa remdesivir, pwede. Ngayon, ang US FDA pinapayagan ang mga doktor mag-prescribe sa ivermectin. Di ba ho? Pero, dito sa atin hindi pwede. Pagdating na naman sa Veklury, remdesivir, susundan na naman natin sila. whatever fits the big pharma agenda, sinusundan ng DOH. I'm sorry to say, malinaw po sa akin, nakikita ko itong nangyari.
Sir, we are just driven by kung ano po yung sinasabi ng latest evidence, so not necessarily po big pharma. We support the local
Okay.
pharma.
So, ito pong remdesivir, naniniwala kayo na hindi dapat at sundan natin ang WHO.
So yung solidarity trial is a big trial. There are also other trials na nakita doon sa evidence review po ng Living CPG, and so far meron pong benefit but for a subset of patients only.
Hindi ho, kasi yung sinasabi niyo CPG, sa atin na lang yun eh. Pagka ivermectin, ayaw niyong gawa ng trial. Pagka naman remdesivir, pwede.
Okay po, so I think we announced recently that the DOH will support an ivermectin local clinical trial na po. This is in the works na po with the Department of Science and Technology.
Okay, so do I get your commitment na yung mga taong magfa-file ng case? Kasi the case should be filed against DOH because you allowed the use of remdesivir here even if WHO did not. But at the minimum, ay ma-reimburse sila dun sa sobrang taas ng presyo ng remdesivir. And number one, if they win the case against the Department of Health at against the Republic of the Philippines, dapat i-reimburse nyo lahat na ng bayad sa remdesivir. Dahil WHO nagsabi hindi pwede, tinuloy nyo pa rin.
Sir, we are just driven by the evidence po. So kung meron pong some benefit and it can potentially help some patients, inaalaw po yun ng Department of Health.
But minimum, pwede sila mag-reimburse.
Right now po, yun po yung inaayos kasi in the Bayanihan Act, so kailangan po approve ng HTAC, yun po kung ano man ang babayaran ng gobyerno, but the minimum requirement kailangan may EUA at least. So
Yung sabi nyo kanina, Dr. Guerrero, na pagkasobra sa presyo, ay you will work on the reimbursement.
Hindi po reimbursement, it is the suggested retail price. So this is a policy under the Price Act together with the Department of Trade and Industry.
Yes, so
can investigate po yung overpricing.
So they will be reimbursed if over and above the suggested retail price.
Hindi po reimburse pero may parusa po yan sa Price Act.
Eh paano yung tao nagbayad?
Wala pa po kasi itong EUA, sir. So but right now we are looking into this and then para mapasok siya doon sa benefit package ng PhilHealth.
Anyway, mahirap, hindi ko makuha, Dr. Guerrero, yung commitment from DOH. Sabi nyo may price ganito pero hindi nyo naman papayagan pala ma-reimburse yung tao. Wala naman pakialam ang tao kung maparusahan nyo yung mga hospital eh. Di ba? I'm not saying the doctors because the doctors follow your protocol. Ang gusto ng tao, mabalik man lang ang pera niya. And that, I think, should be the one studied by DOH. Now, si Dr. Dalmason po, if I may ask, regarding dun sa license ng doctors. Dr. Dalmason, tama po ba, Dr. Domingo? Dr. Agbayani, pareho kayong estudyante ni Dr. Dalmason?
Totoo po.
Okay, so malinaw po. So, kumbaga sa guro, guro natin si Dr. Dalmason.
With virtue of age. Sige na.
Opo. Ma'am, tanong ko lang po, kasi PRC kayo, sinabi nyo, Philippine Regulation Commission sa mga doctors. Pagka po nag-prescribe ng ivermectin ng mga doktor, kasi sabi po ng FDA, pwede na, based on the issuances ng order nila, pwede na po natin protektahan ng mga doktor na hindi na po sila matatanggalan ng lisensya.
Hindi po. Kasi kailangan po i-revoke. Kasi we follow the PMA Ethical Code of Ethics. Kasi sila po yung apo namin. So kung hindi i-revoke yun, if anybody complains against a doctor at idadala po yun sa PRC, we will litigate. We will hear the case.
Ma'am, okay ma'am.
Sir, yung underpinning regulation ng FDA, kailangan, sabi nga ni Congressman Marcoleta, nasa gera. At yung EO, directive yun sa inyo from the President. Pwede ho nilang gawa ng circular yun. So kung hindi babaguhin po ng FDA, ang stand po ng PRC, we will follow whatever the PMA says, which is dictated upon by the FDA. Na hindi ka pwedeng mag-prescribe ng
So, meaning ma'am, based on the EO of the President, a circular can be issued that an approved drug without a product registration may be allowed to be manufactured given na titingnan nila kung sino yung manufacturing company na yon?
Kasi po sir, wag nilang ipilit yung CSP. Katulad po ng sabi ninyo, terminally ill yun dahil ang sitwasyon nun, AIDS. Ngayon po, is a public emergency, hindi po gay community ang involved lang. Lahat ng tao ay involved. Kailangan yung mindset ng circular, ganun, katulad ng sinasabi ng mga congressmen. Kaya ka nga binigyan ng directive, it's an authority. It is for you to define.
Oh, thank you for that, ma'am. Ma'am, may I know, ma'am, what you teach in UP PGH? Ma'am, naka-unmute po.
I am a practicing obstetrician, so I know clinical practice. Kaya litong-lito sila sa CPG at treatment guideline at living recommendations. Nalilito sila doon. I teach pharmacology. I have a master's degree in pharmacoepidemiology. So yun po ang aking background.
And ma'am, you came here as a professor of PGH and one of those, are you ma'am the chairman of the PRC for doctors?
Retired na po ako sa UP, kaya nalulungkot ako because the people that I listen to now were my students. And I feel very responsible. I'm sorry to say that.
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, you are saying now that you are pro...
Mike,
Yes, ma'am.
Mike,
Yes, boss.
you have forgotten your over.
Last question, boss. Last question. So, ma'am, Dr. Salvacion, as a PRC member and former professor of the doctors here, you are for ivermectin.
Based on the evidence and the very vague recommendation nung it really doesn't need a clinical trial. I will tell you. Because the purpose of trial now, hindi na siya randomized double blind. It is adaptive. And I think people from DOH, PISMID, UPNIH should update themselves on what an adaptive trial is. Doesn't need the trial. So based on the evidence, the short answer, yes, it should be given a chance. Ang treatment ng COVID is not about, I will give this drug. I will not give this drug. It is stage dependent. Sabi nga ni Dr. Nicolas, if you reach the inflammatory and the severe immunologic response, wala ka nang babalikan. Kaya kailangan mong habulin yung viral replication phase niya. So all the drugs are correct. It is the timing that's important.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maraming salamat sa pagkakataon.
Thank you, Representative Mike Defensor. Before we continue, may I recognize the following members: D.S. Neptali, Boyet Gonzalez, Representative Tony Pet Albano. Next to interpret is the Honorable Deputy Speaker Lito Atienza. Sir, you have the floor.
Salamat po, Mr. Chairman. Matagal ko na iniintay ito na matanong ko ang DOH at ang FDA dito sa kababalaghan na nangyayari sa bansa. Sila inaasahan natin, wala tayong nakukuhang guidance sa kanila. Ang mga tao ay namamatay, our relatives, our friends, people close to us, our neighbors are dying. But they don't seem to be noticing that. Sabi ni Deputy Speaker Marcoleta, boksingero si Chairman Domingo or Yusek Domingo. Hindi po pala boksingero. He cannot be compared to a boxer. He is a basketball player because he passes the ball. He doesn't want to accept the fact na FDA ang problema natin ngayon. So I'm happy that he's still around. And I'm also doubly happy somebody from DOH, although my good friend Secretary Duque does not seem to be interested on this national issue that is now raging all over the country. To start with, may I ask Mr. Chairman, Yusek Domingo, some questions relevant to our concern? Pwede po ba, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may proceed. Yusek, Eric, you may respond to the queries of DS Atienza.
Yusek Domingo, how long have you been with the FDA?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Congressman, officially po 1 year.
1 year.
March po, last year. Nung nag-start po ang pandemic.
in your best understanding of your job, ano po ba sa tingin ninyo ang number one responsibility ng FDA at lalong-lalo na ni Yusek Domingo ang namumuno?
Well, ang trabaho po talaga namin is to make sure na ating mga kababayan ay magkaroon po ng access sa gamot na safe, good, may efficacy and good quality. Yan po ang pangunahin. Kasama na po susunod yung mga pagkain at yung iba po mga produkto.
Tama po yun. Ang function ninyo, kaya kayo nakapwesto sa gobyerno, ay pangalagaan, proteksyonan ang kalusugan ng bawat Pilipino. Tama po ba yun?
Tama po yun. Under the Department of Health po, kasama talagang yun po ang aming primary concern.
Ngayong meron tayong pandemic, meron tayong problema. National problem, as I've said. Your family, my family, we are not in any way exempted from this threat to our lives. Itong virus na ito ay pumapatay. So ang tanong ko sa inyo, bakit parang wala kayong problema? You are dribbling, you're passing the ball, pinapasa niyo sa Kongreso ang trabaho. Kayo na nakaupo dyan, bakit hindi po ninyo bigyan ng aksyon ang isang gamot na overwhelming na ang prueba sa buong mundo? My colleague, Congressman Defensor, presented an incontrovertible and overwhelming evidences of how the situation warrants the use of ivermectin. Pero bakit po ninyo hindi in-actionan to?
Hindi po, Mr. Chair, Mr. Congressman, actually, lahat po naman ng nasa sa batas na maaari namin gawin para po mapabilis ang pagpasok ng bakuna at ng gamot, ginagawa namin. Ito nga pong ivermectin, tinitinan nga natin, tinutulungan po natin yung mga kumpanya kung ano yung pinakamabilis na way na makaregister sila, whether CPR, ito pong DEU or yung EUA na sinabi nga po ni Congressman Defensor. At tinutulungan naman po namin sila, 2 linggo na nga po no, na nakatutok yung ating mga tao para po makakomply lang po dun sa mga requirements natin.
Ngayon, naniniwala na ako, basketball player kayo, no? Dahil nagdi-dribble kayo eh. Hindi yan ang ginagawa nyo eh. Kagabi lamang sa news, meron na naman kayong announcement. Huhulihin ninyo ang mga doktor na magpe-prescribe ng ivermectin. Huhulihin ninyo ang sino mang magdi-distribute itong gamot na ito. Umaamin na ako. Ako'y isa sa mga tumutulong sa mahihirap pagka talagang may problema sa COVID-19. I give them free of charge ivermectin. Sapagkat lahat ng binigyan namin so far, lahat ng tinulungan namin ay gumagaling. Kami nagbibigay din ng liangwa na pinagbabawal ninyo. Lahat ng binigyan namin ng liangwa ng mga mahihirap, gumaling. Yung bang data na yan, di nakakarating sa inyo?
Mr. Chair, Congressman, yung liangwa po, registered po yan sa FDA. Nag-register, approved po yan ng FDA dahil sumunod po sila at na-submit nila lahat. So ang gusto lamang naman po namin ay yung gamot na nadidistribute, sigurado lamang po tayo dun sa laman niya para lang po for the everybody's safety lamang naman po. Kaya po kailangan lang dumaan dun sa...
Hinuhuli po ninyo, may pananakot kayo. Ang doktor na magpe-prescribe, huhulihin nyo. Re-ready ninyo yung pinanggagalingan ng gamot. Nakausap na po ba ninyo si Dr. Agbayani? Andiyan po ngayon kasama natin eh.
Opo.
Nakausap ninyo?
Yeah,
Did you bother to talk to him?
Si Dr. Agbayani po, kilala ko. At katulad po ng sinabi ni Congressman Defensor kanina, kinlaro naman po ng FDA na ang doktor ay may karapatang magreseta. No? Kahit naman po off-label use yun, although we don't encourage it, it is not illegal. So never naman po nagsabi ang FDA na manghuhuli po kami ng doktor. Ang bawal lang po yung magreseta ng gamot na panghayop na irereseta sa tao or ng gamot na hindi po rehistrado.
Again, nagdi-dribble na naman kayo. Ang pinag-uusapan natin yung ivermectin para sa tao. Wala tayong pinag-uusapan para sa hayop. Don't bring the subject to another plane. Hindi natin dapat i-prescribe ang para sa hayop. Pero yung para sa tao, hindi nyo dapat pinipigil at hindi nyo tinatakot at hindi nyo nire-raid. Kayo ang dahilan kaya hindi po makakalat ang gamot na ito sapagkat hindi nyo pinapayagan ng mga ospital eh. Meron lamang kayong 2 pinayagan. So my question is, why allow it with 2 hospitals and not allow it nationwide? Para po naman yung benepisyo na alam na natin. Ako'y nakinig kay Dr. Agbayani. Malinaw po yung paliwanag niya. Ako'y nakinig kay Dr. Landrito. Napakalinaw ng kanyang paliwanag. Kayo po ba'y nakikinig sa kanila?
Opo, ang issue lamang naman po kasi hindi pa rehistrado yung gamot dito sa atin at undergoing registration pa. Kaya kailangan po yung hospital will take responsibility for the medicine that they use at yung doktor din po.
I don't think you are clear on your mandate, doctor. Are you a doctor?
Opo, I am. I'm a professor din po ako sa UP kasama nila
Okay,
Dr. Dalmasyon.
congratulations. Then you are very learned. But the point is, I don't think you have the compassion that people are now feeling in the communities, in the homes of our country. Dahil ang inyong trato sa ivermectin ay para bagang ito illegal na droga. Para bagang ito shabu na dapat iwasan. Why don't you encourage? I have not heard anything from you from the beginning of this issue na encouraging people na mga mahihirap, lalo na kung meron kayong 100, meron na kayong gamot laban sa COVID. Pero kung susunod kayo sa mga binilang ni Congressman Defensor, ay libo-libo ang kailangan ninyo. I cannot understand your logic, Doctor. I don't think you are the right person to handle the FDA. Well, maybe Dr. Agbayani will make a better administrator than you. I am angry and I am frustrated, and now I am angry as a citizen, not only as a congressman. Because you are not doing your job, you are making all of us wait and the nation wait. Sabihin nyo nagtatrabaho kayo, dapat huwag kayong tumigil na trabaho. In 72 hours, you should decide, is ivermectin bad? Sabihin niyo. Is ivermectin acceptable and a possible solution? We're looking for possible solution. Sabihin niyo. Why are you not making any public statement on ivermectin? Ang mga tao ngayon, nagpapainit na lang sa araw, pupunta sa tawing dagat, at nagsusuob na pinagbabawal din ng DOH. At humahanap ng paraan. Dami kong kakilala na matay sa labas ng ospital. Doon na lang sila sa teheras. Doon na lang sila sa bangko kapag wala nang kwarto rin sa ospital. The point is, we are not only at war, we are not only under a state of emergency. This is a situation where people are looking for solutions themselves and not coming from government. Kaya ang nasisisi po rito, madalas, ang Pangulong Duterte, ang national government. Pero ang totoo, ang nagkukulang dito, Department of Health and the FDA. Yan dalawang ahensya yan, dapat siyasatin namin ano ang pagkukulang nyo at panagutin kayo sa korte. Ano po tingin niyo? Kailan niyo matatapos ang finding niyo? Is it good? Is it bad? Sabihin niyo.
Opo, yun po kasing treatment guidelines sa mga clinician po yun sa Department of Health. As the FDA Director General, hindi naman po tamang magsabi ako o mag-endorso ako ng isang gamot or produkto. Ang trabaho ko po ay siguraduhin na kapag available po yung gamot dito sa atin, ay safe po siya. Yun po ang aking ginagawa.
No, you are giving me a lot of bureaucratic gobbledygook. Hindi po tama ang inyong attitude. Pagka ganyan ang attitude nyo, you have no place in government. Because you are directly under the DOH. Tama po ba? Hindi.
Opo. Ang attached agency po ng DOH.
Hindi po ba niyo makausap si Secretary Duque na, Boss, Sec, we are under pressure. People are demanding for action. Can we come out with a statement? Is ivermectin safe or not? As simple as that. No less than Speaker Velasco is so agitated that he wants an answer. Congressman Atienza is equally agitated. I want an answer. The sooner, the better. Talk to Dr. Agbayani. Talk to Dr. Landrito. Huwag niyo silang isnabin sapagkat sila ang mga nagbibigay ng pag-asa. Ang kailangan ng tao ay pag-asa na meron pa tayong solusyon sa problemang ito. But if we listen to the Department of Health and to the FDA, abay, mamamatay na lang ang Pilipino na walang laban. So can we get an answer from you so that this hearing bears fruit? When do we get an answer from you? You coordinate with the Secretary Duque. Your position, clear, very clear, so that every doctor will be guided and citizens will be inspired and given hope. Kailan po kayo pwedeng magbigay ng definite answer on the issue of ivermectin and liangwa? And let me point out, I have been violating your position that ayaw ninyong paggamit ng ivermectin. Ginagamit po namin yan at ginagamit ng marami kong kaibigan at marami naming natutulungang mahihirap. Yung liangwa, marami na pong naligtas na buhay yan ng mga mahihirap na binibigyan namin. Hindi kami nagbebenta, wala kami sa negosyong yan. Pero alam namin may epekto kaya tumutulong kami sa pamamagitan yan. So I am demanding now, Mr. Chairman, from the FDA and the Department of Health, Dr. Guerrero, please tell Secretary Duque, Congress is demanding for a definite position and the soonest possible time. 24 hours, 48 hours, at the most 72 hours. Administratively, you should give an answer. Otherwise, all the agencies of government and the Filipino people should demand for all of you to step down. We are frustrated with the inability of these two agencies to come up with definite answers. We cannot debate on endless definitions and all this gobbledygook, as I've said. Pambobola ito dribble. Hindi naintindihan ng taong bayan yan. Ang naintindihan ng taong bayan, ng nanay niya na nasa upuan sa labas ng ospital at naghihintay ng atensyon. Meanwhile, what do you do with this kind of cases? You don't feel it? We, as members of Congress, we feel it. Sapagkat kami po ang takbuhan ng mga tao, naiintindihan namin ang problema. At ito'y sinasabi ko sa inyo ngayon, umaasa ko, magkakaroon kayo ng desisyon sa isyong ito. At kung hindi po kayo magbibigay ng desisyon pa rin, palagay ko mapipilitan na kami gumawa ng aksyon na baka hindi nyo magustuhan. So, Dr. Domingo,
Mr. Chair,
Domingo,
yes, sir.
I appeal to you. Don't give me the line of bureaucratic red tape, bureaucratic readings and all interpretations. You are the man on the spot. Kasama mo po si Secretary Duque. He is also on the spot. And if you do not move, I'm sorry to say, we cannot also take you as you are now arguing against the common sense perception that you are not doing your job properly. Do it now. Recover from this very, very deep canal that you are in because of inaction. Inaction is killing people. And we cannot allow that. Mr. Chairman, nasabi ko na po ang gusto ko sabihin. Matagal ko nang gustong sabihin niya sa harapan ni Yusek Domingo. I wanted him to hear it straight from me how angry Filipinos are today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. You want to respond? You say,
Yes, sir. Maiksi lamang naman po. Naintindihan naman po namin talaga pong lahat tayo naghahanap po ng kasagutan. But of course, we will craft our reply based talaga po on the scientific evidence available. Ang maganda naman po si Presidente, nag-utos din po talaga siya ng clinical trial na gagawin ng DOST tsaka ng PCHRD na nandito po yata si Director Montoya, no, para nga po magkaroon ng kasagutan sa tanong na ito. Pero yun nga po, siyempre po ang talagang aming maisasagot lamang ay based po dun sa mga scientific data available right now. At talaga pong at this time, hindi naman po namin sinasabi siya ay masama o siya ay mabuti, kundi we know that it is a product under investigation for COVID-19 and the FDA is doing naman po what we can to make it available.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
I request to have the final questions. Ayoko nung final say sa kanila pa rin. Dahil dribble pa rin.
Okay, sir.
Ask the gentleman, I'd like to ask the gentleman, kailan ninyo mabibigyan ng tuldok itong isyong ito? Sapagkat ilang buwan na po ito. Wala po naman kayong ginagawang clinical trial na sinasabi nyo. We cannot wait any further. We are now as anxious and as angry as can be. How many days do you need to have a temporary, not a permanent finding, but based on the clinical tests of other doctors and other nations and other groups and other pwede naman siguro kayong mag-decide na ang tanong lamang po simple, nakakatulong po ba o hindi? Kung hindi nakakatulong, ipagbawal ninyo. Kung nakakatulong, abay, nagpapaaraw na nga lang ang mga tao bilang solusyon sa kanilang problema. Nagpapahangin, umiinom ng maraming tubig, sabi ninyo. At yung soup, pinagbawal ng Department of Health. Kung nandito pa yung kinatawa ng Department of Health, I'd like to ask that simple question. Why are you against all these solutions done at home? Very effective as far as our families are concerned. Bata pa ako, nagsusuob na ako eh. Basta meron akong trangkaso, miya pinagsusubo ko ng nanay ko. Ngayon, maririnig ko sa gobyerno, masama raw yan. Bawal yan. Kaya huwag niyo sisisihin ng tao kung talagang kayo ang tinitignan. Mukhang big money is involved and pharmaceutical control of our drug availability and purchases are concerned. And that may be the reason why ang gamot sa Pilipinas hanggang ngayon, napakamahal. Sa buong Asia, nagmumura na po ang presyo ng gamot. Sa Pilipinas, sky high pa rin. Napatunayan yan ni Congressman Defensor, malinaw na malinaw. Ang pahirap sa tao ngayon, sobra-sobra na. Kaya nasa inyong kamay ang bola. Huwag na nyo i-dribble. I-shoot ninyo para po naman kayo makabawi. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, PS Dito Atensa. Director General Eric, I'd like to ask a few questions. I know that the FDA is just in the side of caution, no? They don't want to rush things, no? But with regards to the EUA and the compassionate special permit, I've noticed that the time that it takes to process, as you said in your slide, is 2 working days for a compassionate special permit. Is that being followed?
Opo, kaya naman po namin yun ng 24 to 48 hours. Basta po yung doktor nag-request at yung para sa pasyente nila, naibibigay po namin yan within 2 days.
Na ano lang kasi ako, no? Kasi time is of the essence, lalo na kung critical ka. Tapos mag-iinta ka ng 48 hours. Tapos siyempre yung 48 hours, baka mamaya itatransport pa yung permit na yan from the FDA sa Labang. Yung hospital kunyari ay nasa Northern Luzon or nasa Visayas. Ano ba yan? Through email ba yan? Yung ano nyo?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through email naman po yan, no? Yun po yung maximum, yung 48, pero usually within the same working day naman po na ilalabas namin yan eh. Pero email na lang po.
I've read in the papers na you've issued two compassionate special permits. As of now, ilan na ba ang compassionate special permit sa ivermectin?
Sa ngayon po, meron pa pong na-approve na isang hospital kahapon. May pending pa po na isa daw na nag-apply din po kahapon na may kulang lang po na papel na isasubmit today.
Yung remdesivir ba, ano bang permit yan? Yung EUA ba siya?
Hindi po. It's exactly the same. Compassionate special permit din po siya. Hindi pa rin po siya approved dito sa Pilipinas.
Bakit yung remdesivir is so so widely used? In fact, I think about 95% ng treatment sa moderate to severe ay remdesivir is one of the component ng treatment. So what do you think is the reason na iba yung kinalabasan na both of them are under the CSP pero ivermectin and your personal or professional opinion, bakit naging ganyan?
Ako ang tingin kasi po yun ang request ng mga doctors. I think kasi po yun ang mas may experience na sila since last year. Nag-start na pong ginagamit yung remdesivir. Yung ivermectin po kasi ngayong taon lang nag-start. Kaya naman po nung nalaman nila na pwedeng mag-apply ngayon po, medyo dumadami na. No? Baka hindi pa nila gamay gamitin yung gamot. Pero hula ko lamang po yun. No? We only process as the doctor's request.
Okay. So tingnan nyo, how many pending applications for the CSP for ivermectin?
Right now po, meron pong isa na dumating po kahapon na application.
Okay. Kasi nakalagay doon, no, sa inyong mga requirements na yan nga, na I think may waiver yata, no? Yung pasyente ba magsasign ng waiver?
The doctor po.
The doctor. So, diyan natatakot kasi, di ba? Yung waiver na yan. Kasi, in fact, you are pinning the blame on the doctor na. Kaya ang dami natatakot dyan sa pag-issue ng ivermectin eh. Like what DS Lito Atienza said, what is the timetable with the announcement of the President last Monday? How long do you think will we have a temporary EUA issued to ivermectin? If ever positive results come out of these trials, how long would you think that result would come about?
Mabilis lamang po kung meron naman trial results na. It will take a few weeks. Pero palagay ko po, mas mauuna pa po yung Certificate of Product Registration kasi nga po meron nang nag-apply last week and actually that will be easier kasi pag CPR po pwede siya talagang ibenta, i-market commercially, no? So ito po yung mas
may nag-apply na for ivermectin.
Meron pa pong nag-apply, opo, 2 company, isang local manufacturer at saka isang importer. So yun pong mga regulators naman natin, mabilis naman pong tinitingnan yung kanilang submissions even if they submit na piecemeal para lang po makumpleto agad.
Thank you, Dr. Eric, Yusek Eric. The last to interpellate as of now is Representative Franz Castro. Honorable Castro, you may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So nagpapasalamat ako, no, Mr. Chair, dito sa iyong inquiry at pag-schedule nitong inquiry na to, napapanahon nito, Mr. Chair, no? Lalo na marami tayong mga na open na mga katotohanan about doon sa gamot. Totoo po kayo, no? Ang pharmaceutical industry po ay isang talagang napakalaking business sa buong mundo. At isa nga ang Pilipinas po sa mga pinahihirapan nito dahil sa napakamahal na gamot as compared doon sa ilan nating mga karatig na bansa. So nakakabahala, Mr. Chair, no, doon sa isang pinahayag ng ating isang resource person na we are relying on importers ng gamot at yun ang dahilan bakit po napakamahal ng ating mga gamot. Sabi naman po ng isang resource person natin, we have all the resources, we have all the matatalinong Pilipino na pwedeng mag-develop dito sa atin ng ating mga gamot na hindi lang nabibigyan ng oportunidad, pondo, talagang suporta, okay, para makapag-develop. Tapos ito nga na parang nako-convince na ako na itong ivermectin ay talagang isa rin sa pwedeng makatulong sana sa panahon ng COVID at napatunayan ito ng ating mga ilang colleagues. At ayun nga, ang tanong, Mr. Chair, meron din i-present kasi na maraming mga application sa ibang mga drugs na dito sa atin na nakapending sa FDA. So once and for all, Mr. Chair, sana matanong natin ang FDA kasi since 2013 ba yun o 2014 kahit na nga re-registration, napakatagal. Hindi ba pwede itong meron po bang time frame, Mr. Chair, kahit na doon sa pinisinta ng ating resource person na mga drugs na pending yung kanilang application mula noong 2014 hanggang noong 2019. May time frame po ba, Mr. Chair, ang ating FDA? DG Domingo?
Mr. Chair, maaari ko pong pasagutin si Director Joyce Sirunay. Siya po yung director natin ng Center for Drugs. Sila po yung nagre-register ng mga gamot. Director Joyce?
Thank you, DG. Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, Director Joyce, you may proceed.
Thank you, DG. And thank you, Mr. Chair. For the old applications, we are really scanning our existing database kasi talagang pinapatapos namin yung luma. Having said that, nag-o-online na po tayo ngayon. Ang lahat ng low risk, nagsisimula na pong dinadry run. We plan to finish it in 2022 ito na yung new drug applications. Sa ngayon, sa low risk tayo nagsimula para ma-develop yung programs. Kasi ang sa tingin po natin, the best way to approach this is to streamline and rationalize. Kaya ngayon po sa ating mga industry partners, naka-up na po ang ating EAR, automatic AR application, kasi ito po yung pinakamarami. Pag okay na po ito, then the rest, the medium risk and then the high risk, yung mga new drug applications. Ang plano po talaga, Mr. Chair, ay 2022, lahat online na, and we hope na yung mga old applications na natagalan sa amin ay ma-address namin itong by using e-service na po. Over.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, medyo matagal na po, noong 2014 pa ito, yung sinabi pong mga list of drugs ng mga local pharmaceutical na kulang na lang ng kulang na lang ng permiso nitong ating FDA, itong DOH. So nakakapagtaka ano yung dahilan kung bakit ito ay tumatagal. At nagbibigay din sa isip natin, Mr. Chair, na nagbibigay ito ng ng pagkakataon do sa mga importers natin ng drugs na mamayagpag sa ating pharmacy natin. So inaasahan natin, Mr. Chair, na magsasubmit ang FDA noong update and development nitong at least yung pinisinta ng ating resource speaker kanina, kaugnay ng mga permit nila doon sa mga drugs. Pwede po ba yun, Mr. Chair, makakuha tayo ng update, development nitong mga drugs na ito, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Director General Eric.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you give an update? Siguro, if ever you are not prepared, you can give us an update through our ComSec by next week on the status as requested by Representative Castro.
Yes, Mr. Chair, yung pong report on the backlogs, prepare po natin sa Center for Drugs, and we will submit it through the committee, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ito po maganda rin yung pinresent ni our colleagues, Representative Defensor, kaugnay nung overpricing ng drugs na ginagamit sa ating mga COVID-19 patient. At kung titignan ninyo, hindi lang doble ang presyo. Alam niyo po, nagkaroon po ako ng kaibigan na nagka-COVID. Alam niyo po, umabot po sa 400,000 ang kanyang bill. Pangalawa po ang pharmacy sa pinakamalaki sa bill niya. Pangalawa po sa doctor's fee. Umabot po ng 122,000. Yung sa pharmacy niya, sa doctor's fee po 170,000. So na lang po kami ng promissory note para mabayaran na unti-unti yung hospital. So isa rin po itong baka dapat din tingnan din natin, Mr. Chair, sa inquiry, yung overpricing. Alam niyo po, pandemic time na nasa panahon tayo ng crisis, pero parang ginagamit ang panahon sa pagsasamantala sa ating mga pasyente, sa ating mga kababayan. Kasi lahat naman tayo ngayon, kahit na economic crisis dinadanas natin. Pero ito sobra po samantala ito doon sa ating mga mamamayan. Ito pag-overprice. Kasi magbabayad nito PhilHealth Ang babayaran halimbawa ng isang mild 143,267 kasama sa whole bill doon yung pharmacy. Mr. Chair, pwede ko po bang siguro PhilHealth na po ito o DOH. Meron po ba kayong ginagawa dito sa overpricing sa DTI? Kasi maganda yung mga example ni Representative Mike Defensor at maimbestigahan sana itong overpricing na ito. Ano po yung ginagawa? Kasi pondo rin ng mamamayan ito na ibabayad sa PhilHealth. So kung ganito yung pagsasamantala ng mga ilang hospital sa pamamagitan ng overpricing ng drugs, so talagang yung pondo ng mamamayan po ay madedeplete. So, yun po, Mr. Chair. Ano po ginagawa ng DOH dito? At anong pwedeng gawin?
Okay po, may I answer po? Again, this is Dr. Guerrero from
Yes,
the Department of Health.
Dr. Guerrero, you may
Yes po.
answer.
Meron kasi tayong Price Act po. So this is a law that we are currently implementing with the Department of Trade and Industry. At naglalagay nga po tayo ng suggested retail price now for the COVID-19 drugs. Nagdadagdag kami ng devices. So far po, yung mga sumbong sa amin na mga overpricing, yung po mga face shield, yun po, nasusumbong, nakaka-attend kami ng hearing. And then the overcharges on the remdesivir, it was brought to our attention. That's why we had to review the pricing and we revised the pricing. I would agree there is some overpricing because we verified the wholesale price being given by the wholesalers to our hospital. So we encourage po the consumers, the patients to please ipunin niyo yung resibo, tas pakisumbong po dito dahil po binibigyan po yan ng atensyon ng DOH at Department of Trade and Industry.
Pwede, Mr. Chair, thank you po. Pwede po bang mas maging proactive ang action ng ating DOH? Hindi lang kasi parang kapag meron lang may nagsumbong, yun na. Kasi ito parang policy na ito ilang mga ospital na yung mga ganito. Hindi ba pwedeng meron tayong continuous monitoring ng mga hospital in terms of their pricing doon sa mga drugs na binibigay nila doon sa pasyente nila?
Yes po, papareportin po yung mga hospital. Ngayon po kasi ang minomonitor natin yung maximum drug retail price. So kasama na rin itong COVID-19. Nahagip nga po itong remdesivir. Kaya nga po nag-revise ng SRP. At ngayon po yung mga sumbong, pwede po natin yang iproseso together with the DTI. Kasi merong mga kaakibat na sanction dun sa overcharging.
And then, yes, Mr. Chair. Tapos pwedeng hindi bayaran, Hindi bayaran or kapag nag-claim itong mga hospital na to nung kanilang PhilHealth, hindi bayaran talaga yung overpricing nila. Okay? Doon sa mga drugs. Pwede po ba ito, Mr. Chair?
I think we have to refer po kung ano yung mga kaakibat na sanctions in accordance with the Price Act po.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, pwede bang malaman kung ano yung time frame ng pag-resolve nila ng mga ganitong kaso?
Kailangan lang siguro meron pong documentation yung mga resibo nga po, and then mabilis naman po yung DTI pag po meron kaming sinusumbong, so pinapatawag naman po yung mga nag-overcharge. So far po nakaka-attend kami ng hearings dun sa mga face masks tsaka po dun sa face shields.
Okay. Pangatlong tanong na, Mr. Chair, dahil mahalaga itong drugs at magandang ma-nationalize din itong mga pharmaceutical natin at ma-encourage yung ating mga local pharmaceutical drugs in terms of yung sa mga research and so on, at mabigyan din sila ng ng sapat na pondo kaugnay nito. So meron po bang roadmap o planning ang DOH kaugnay noong pagkakaroon po natin? Halimbawa po, yung pagbubukas natin ng research and development para doon sa paggagawa manufacture ng mga bakuna, ng mga drugs. Meron po bang ganong plano ang DOH?
Okay, pinag-uusapan pa lang po ito kanina during the meeting with the DOST. So meron na pong vaccine roadmap na hinahain ngayon upon the directives of the President. So, but this is being led by the Department of Trade and Industry Bureau Board of Investment. So because they're in charge of developing particular industries, we are providing input as the Department of Health kung ano yung mga kailangang produkto, essential to respond to our most important disease burden. Ito po ay meron na pong vaccine roadmap. I think nandito po yung DOST PCHRT who can probably provide ano po yung update dun sa vaccine roadmap.
Mr. Chair, pwede nating mapakinggan yung ating ano. And of course, aside from vaccine, yung sinasabi nga po natin, how about yung plano po doon sa pagmamanufacture ng sarili nating medicine? Meron din po bang DOH na ganon?
Ever since po, matagal na pong sinasabi yan ng Department of Health, we are for locally strengthening of our local industry, at napatunayan yan ngayong pandemic na yun nga, hindi tayo priority. So very important po talaga na meron tayong strong pharmaceutical industry. We can provide our needs. So napag-uusapan na rin po ito sa Board of Industry. Siguro pa mas maganda yung DTI po ang mag-present kung ano na po yung Pharma Zone Initiative.
Mr. Chair, can we ask the OST or the DTI, Mr. Chair?
Honorable Chair.
Yes, the DOST.
Yes,
sir.
Yes, if I can respond to the question of the
Yes, you may respond.
Honorable Congress. Yeah. Thank you very much po. Regarding the DOST initiatives to actually produce and identify all therapeutic, diagnostic, and preventive options in the face of the current COVID-19 pandemic, and by virtue of our mandate as the National Coordinating Body for Health Research, we have actually instituted already po in the area of vaccine development both the short-term, medium-term, and long-term plan po. As member of the task group for vaccine evaluation and selection, and also as part of our commitment to the WHO as far as the solidarity trials for both therapeutics and vaccines are concerned. So meron po tayong mga, through the, as sinabi po ni Director Guerrero, regarding the negotiations between our local manufacturing firms and yung vaccine developers po, most of them based abroad, for us to start what we call the local vaccine industry in the country, so that we become more self-sufficient as far as vaccines are concerned. So meron na pong ongoing negotiations. May a number of companies na po have signified their interest and their willingness to invest on the development of vaccines po in the country, both for the medium term. Medium term po, ito po yung vaccine fill and finish, yung kukunin po ang bulk antigen from abroad, tapos dito po ipapackage in vials, syringes, para po mas maging available sa ating bansa. Pero yung long term po ay talagang magkaroon tayo ng kapasidad na gumawa ng bakuna from the very first stage up to commercialization po. And part of that po ang pagtatayo ng Virology Science Technology Institute of the Philippines na may na pong bill in Congress. And ito po para po masimulan yung mga basic research po on vaccine candidates na pwede po mag-address sa mga importanteng sakit po sa ating bansa. At hindi lang po ito para sa mga tao, para din po sa mga common plant and animal diseases din. But of course, nakafocus po ngayon sa COVID-19, kaya po talagang kailangan natin yung vaccine Virology Science Technology Institute of the Philippines. Yun lang po.
Okay. Mr. Chair, yung sa medicine po, yung ating DTI?
We have a representative from the DTI to answer. I think DTI, I think wala tayong DTI.
Ayan. Okay, so yun na lang po Mr. Chair, malaki talaga yung pangangailangan natin na magkaroon talaga tayo ng sarili nating industriya ng medicine at industriya ng vaccine, kasi alam natin sa presyuhan sa labas napakamahal talaga, lalo na kung meron po tayong sariling halimbawa yung mga research and development na mga virology center, mas mura po yata na ibibigay at nagkakaroon tayo ng discount. So yun lang po Mr. Chair, maganda yung ating inquiry para po ma-realize natin na magkaroon tayo ng sarili nating industriya sa medicine at bakuna. Thank you po.
Thank you. Thank you po. Next to interpret it is the representative, First District, Quezon City, Representative Anthony Onyx Crisologo.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Mike Aglipay, for alam kong mahaba na yung discussion natin, but I would like to just make a follow-up questions dun sa tanong ni Congressman Mike Defensor as well as ni Deputy Speaker DOH and Deputy Speaker Lito Atienza. Of course, yesterday nag-present po sa ang IATF as well as DOH about vaccines, and we all know that is the foremost important cure to COVID-19. Kaya lang po dito sa committee ito pinag-uusapan natin yung mga drugs na pwedeng i-prescribe ng ating mga physicians to kumbaga narrow the gap between having a vaccine habang hindi pa available and treating persons who are infected with COVID-19 or preventing COVID-19. Napag-usapan po kanina yung line of questioning po ni DS Atienza na siya rin po ay namimigay ng libreng ivermectin. I'm sure DS Herrera as well as Congressman Mike Defensor and ako rin ay tumutulong sa mga nangangailangan. Nais ko pong tanungin sana Mr. Chairman sa FDA or kung meron pong personnel from PNP here, napag-usapan po kasi dati yung binigay na memorandum na pinapacheck po yung mga nakakatanggap ng ivermectin. And nasabi nga ho kanina ni FDA Secretary Domingo na ito po ay ina-apply na for EUA as well as ang pinagbabawal lang ay yung animal grade. Ngayon po, since the PNP is here as well as FDA, maaaring tanungin first question po, kayo ba ay pinamomonitor nyo or pinapatanong natin number one yung mga nakakatanggap o kaya binibigyan? Kasi po we have been receiving reports that people receiving free ivermectin for human consumption are being approached by PNP, CIDG personnel wanting to question them at the same time. Parang natatakot sila. So I just want to ask that question kasi yung po yung tinitignan ko yung sa chat dito sa Facebook and sa YouTube. Yun po yung tanong, bakit yung mga nakakatanggap, tinatanong ho sila. May problema ho ba since this is being applied for EUA already? Parang yun nga po yung sinasabi ni DS Atienza, parang delaying tactic. Ano po talaga yung problema? So I like to ask to FDA and PNP to answer that question, Mr. Chairman.
Before you answer, DG Eric, nice, Dr. Jesus and Honorable Yasser Balindong who are attending. Thank you. Thank you. May I answer now?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yun po kasing nakakatanggap at yung umiinom, hindi naman po yan, wala naman po silang kaso. Ang chine-check lang po ng FDA, pinapa-remind lang po natin sa lahat na yung ivermectin is a prescription drug. So ibig sabihin, dapat po doktor yung magbigay at saka pharmacist po yung nagdi-dispense. At yung pong aming regulatory office, nag-coordinate naman po yan sa PNP. Nandito po si General, para po alam kung ano po yung illegal at saka kung ano yung legal. So yun nga po, yung bawal, yung mga panghayop, ibibigay sa tao, saka po yung mga unregistered na produktong hindi naman natin alam kung saan nanggaling. Pero otherwise, yung pong mismong tao, wala naman pong kaso yun. Yun lang pong unregistered at saka yung mga drugs nga po na hindi pang tao. Yun po ang ating binabantayan.
So Sec Domingo, follow-up question. Kung ito po ay with may prescription, wala akong problema yon.
Wala po problema yon. Ang doktor po, meron siyang karapatang mag-prescribe ng gamot, kahit po off-label yung use. So yun po yung kinlaro din po natin, na hindi po problema yon basta po may reseta po ng doktor.
Okay, just because maybe we can tackle it during the next hearing or another. But we have been receiving reports po kasi na people are being questioned. Siguro within Quezon City, 5 or 6 na po kaming na nakakatanggap na nilalapitan sila. Hindi namin alam, baka gusto rin ng ivermectin, but parang yun nga po natatanong saan nakuha ganyan. Klaro naman ho may prescription. So as our House Speaker is pushing also for it as well as our fellow members here today, sana po magbigyan ng klarong statement lang po ng FDA because for the past 2 weeks, ibang statement po nung una, bawal animal grade. Then the following statement was, ito po naman ay human grade. Pwede din. Ngayon po, clinical trial. So naguguluhan lang po kasi syempre, alam naman ho natin lahat nakakatanggap. May mga nakakuha, alam ho natin sa mga Viber groups ho yan. So can we ask the PNP to just clarify the situation kung ito po ba ay talagang merong... Kasi sa statement ho ng ating mga colleagues here today, I think the memo was recalled already since clinical trials are going on. So
siguro, Representative, next week, call on CIDG General Oliver and Mondias to enlighten you on your query.
Thank you, Chairman Aglipay.
Good morning, sir.
CIDG? Yes, sir.
I am Police Brigadier General Oliver Modjas, and in coordination with FDA, because of we have received directive from the PMS of regarding ivermectin, and also we were directed by the Chief PNP to monitor illegal use of distribution of illegal selling of ivermectin in coordination with FDA. So as of now, we haven't received any report on our troops arresting anyone on this, because first of all, we have to refer it first to FDA in case we have case on this, sir.
Okay. Thank you po. Thank you to CIDG for clarifying that statement. Actually, one of those who nagsumbong sa amin, naghiwan pa yung CIDG ng card, but from looking at the card, mukhang fake. So I will just forward it to COMSEC para matrace nyo yung certain police major. I don't want to name the name, no, but ifo-forward ko na lang sa COMSEC for CIDG to check kung may contact number pa nga ito eh. So baka there are these false people claiming that they are CIDG, harassing people. Ang masisira naman ho dyan ay ang PNP. Alam nyo kung tiwalang-tiwala tayo sa PNP, masisira naman ho yung pangalan ng CIDG. Kung nagsabi ho ng statement ang FDA that there is no order for that at clarify na po ng CIDG na wala rin po. So sana po maklarify po natin yun. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Crisologo. Before next to give a manifestation is Representative George Bustos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the onset, would like to commend you for leading this motu proprio inquiry. At least dahil dito nagkaroon ng pag-uusap at maaaring mas maging malalim, malawak ang mga hakbangin ng gobyerno, no, para mas magkaroon ng pag-asa mga kababayan natin. Actually, I prepared questions for the resource persons. Dahil sa presentation nila, halos nasagot na to sa mga tinanong na rin ng mga kasama nating kongresista. Yung sa akin lang naman apila lang naman po sa FDA at sa DOH. Alam niyo po, as of yesterday, meron tayong 18,955 na naitala na total number of cases na sa mga pulis. Ano po? Ito mga pulis natin, hindi po nagrereklamo kasi mga to susunod lang po to kung ano po yung iutos sa kanila. So kung ito pong ivermectin at saka yung mga ibang gamot, ano po meron silang prophylactic at saka maging treatment medicine na rin. Sana po pabilisin na po ito ng FDA. At ang DOH po rin sana, hindi nakakalimutan ng mga pulis natin, lalo na sa prioritization list, A4 po sila, no? Pero hindi rin naman, wala naman po reklamo pulis natin, nasunod lang yan, nagtatrabaho po palagi. So yung apila lang po natin, sana bilisan po natin, total na isabi na rin po ng mga kasama nating mga kongresista ito. Wala na po akong katanungan, Mr. Chair. Mabuhay po kayo at dahil dito po sa hearing na ito, sa inquiry nito, mas magkakaroon ng pag-asa ang sambayanan. Sana po itong mga binigkas at iniwang salita sa atin ni Chairman Eric Domingo at ng DOH ay talagang pagtuunan talaga ng atensyon at umaasa po talaga ang sambayanan. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Representative Bustos. Last to interpellate is the Honorable June Gato of the Lone District of Batanes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I get a confirmation from maybe Dr. Montoya or Dr. Guerrero if there are indeed studies that have shown that ivermectin is indeed beneficial in the prophylaxis or treatment of COVID-19?
There are ongoing trials po, sir. We're waiting for the results. We're really hoping that there could really be treatments for COVID-19, sir. So we are open. Kung meron pong favorable result, then why not?
So there are no studies that have been finished yet.
Ongoing po lahat.
Can you also
may I comment, Honorable Chair?
Yes, Dr. Montoya.
Yeah, meron na po mga finished studies. Pero po, we just follow the recommendations of the WHO that more studies have to be done. Kaya po yung mga trial na sisimulan natin dito ay gagawin po natin. At we are of course open to all of these therapeutic options. We are just providing more evidence and more information as basis for the use of, for example, of ivermectin. Pero po ito pong mga studies na ito, marami pong ongoing din ngayon na atin din pong iniintay ang result. Katulad po yung anti-CoV trial. It's a big trial in Africa. And they're actually testing ivermectin used solely and in combination with other medicines po. Thank you po.
Thank you. Can you also confirm that there are also as many studies that have shown that ivermectin has very limited or no benefit in the prophylaxis or treatment of COVID-19?
Honorable Chair, hindi ko po masasabi na exactly na hindi po mas marami po ang for or against. Ang masasabi ko lang po, inconsistent. Meron po mga studies na nagsasabi na maganda siya. May studies na nagsasabi na hindi po conclusive. Pero nandun pa po ang potential na talagang pwedeng useful siya. It can go either way. Kaya nga po ang WHO ay nagsasabi na kailangan po ay gumawa pa ng study para talagang makagawa ng definite recommendation. Pero yun po ay recommendation ng WHO. Kung ang decision po ng FDA ay ibase po yan doon sa mga studies na nangyari na po at natapos na at makonvince na talagang may usefulness ay mag-i-issue naman po ng authorization ang FDA. Salamat po.
So is it safe or is it a fair statement at this point na hindi pa po tayo sigurado na ivermectin ay nakaka-benefit sa pag-prevent or pag-treat ng COVID-19 at this point? Is that a fair statement, Mr. Chair? Dr. Montoya.
Kung ako po, yung sa akin lang po, this is my personal opinion. I do not say that it is the opinion of the council or the research community. Ang masasabi ko lang po, may potential po siya. At ito po ay base na nga doon sa mga ibang pag-aaral nagsabi na meron siyang gamit at may benepisyo. Pero sabi ko nga po, hindi siya consistent. Kaya nga po ang aking palagay lang naman ay baka kailangan gumawa pa ng trials. Although may nangyayari na po sa ibang bansa at lalabas na yung resulta, malapit na po. So baka yun po ang makapagbigay pa ng more evidence na talagang ito po ay magiging useful. But as I said po, that is up to the FDA for their own evaluation of the current evidence. Kasi even po ang medical community ay divided. May nagsasabi na opo, base sa kanila evaluation, useful siya. Meron po nagsasabing hindi. Kaya po, ang final arbiter po dyan ay ang FDA po dahil siya po ang mag-i-issue ng permit kung talaga pang ito ay pwedeng magamit sa mga may sakit ng COVID-19. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Jimmy. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. One last question kay Director General Eric Domingo. I remember in the previous meeting, you were saying that in a matter of few weeks, the results of the studies on ivermectin studies abroad will be out soon. May we have a more or less time frame kung kailan nalalabas itong resulta ng studies ng ivermectin abroad?
Well, yes, Mr. Chair, yun nga po ang advice sa amin nila Dr. Montoya. Tingin po nila within next month, lalabas na nga po ang mga resulta. And then we will have more data, more evidence. Like we said, talaga naman po ngayon naghihintay lang tayo ng mas marami pang ebidensya para talagang mas klaro, no? But of course, like ano po, ang ivermectin ay registrable naman po sa Pilipinas dahil ito ay talaga namang known anti-parasitic, no? And it can always be registered as that.
Thank you, Director General Eric. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is all. Maraming pong salamat.
Thank you, Representative Jungao. Before we proceed, the reaction for Dr. Agbayani would like to manifest on the statement of Director Montoya. Dr. Agbayani, you can
yes,
manifest.
We can always say na we need more evidence, and parang ano yan parang pera yan. We always need money. But how much money is enough, so to speak? So if I may po karin, minadali ko kasi yung aking opening statement. If you just give me 5 minutes, I'll show you all the data that you really need to know. Need to know lang po ito. Pwede po ba yun? Pwede po bang payagan ako? 5 minutes lang.
Siguro paunahin muna natin kasi may yung congressman na isa kasi after then babalikan kita. Kasi yung congressman is priority here, Dr. Agbayani. Pero we will let you present your evidence. Promise yan. I'll get back to you. Next to interpolate is Congressman VG Lacson. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Indulgence to Dr. Agbayani. This will be short. I'll just like a manifestation and a little bit of some questions, clarificatory question. So kanina pa ako nakikinig. So I'm hearing pros and cons against and for sa use ng ivermectin. Actually, I'm interested on ivermectin, yung product registration niya. Some scientists or doctors from the United States and the UK, particularly the PLCC or frontliner critical care something yan. No, yung group nila is advocating the use 90, at least 89 or 90% efficacy as a prophylaxis. Parang importante yun nami-miss out natin. But then sinasabi ng FDA, we need clinical trials. Ang question ko, clinical trials, ano ba yung clinical trials natin dito? Is it the treatment or prophylaxis? Then, pumasok naman din yung merong sinasabi na may conflict of interest, yung PSMID, PSMID, na based na doon sa presentation kanina is Dr. Berhere, which is DOH, is kasama sa included in the steering committee, which is private organization daw itong PSMID. So medyo nakumpista naman ako doon. Is it proper or ethical? No, na magkakaroon ng hindi bias na result or recommendation. So isa tanong ko sa FDA, paano ba natin i-register ito? Ano yung timeline? No, kasi ngayon yung last hearing, nag-hearing na tayo dito regarding this ivermectin. No.
sinasabi nga, effective, ngayon meron ding kumontra. But on the end, alam na natin na kasama daw siya sa formulary list of drugs. So, kasama siya. No? Pero pinagtatalunan ba natin ngayon is nakaka-treat siya ng COVID o hindi? So, big question mark yan. But, kung sinabi natin, nag-apply ako, example, hypothetical question, I'm a pharmaceutical company or whoever product na gagawa ng ivermectin. Mag-a-apply ako sa inyo ngayon. How long na sinabi niyo kanina, merong kailangan project registration and everything in that. But we know this ivermectin is a drug that can be used, is used for anti-parasitic or like that, like treatment of scabies, something like that. It's oral, no? So, kung nag-apply ako, sinabi ko, it's for I'm applying for this approved. Kasi alam daw natin, 40 years na to. I'm applying na itong gamot na to is for treatment ng anti-parasite. How long will it take? Kasi may abroad na to, matagal na to. Itong produkto na to is in the market. I think Merck's pa yung unang nag-market nito. It's been there for 40 years. Nag-expire daw yung patent niya noong 1996. So how long will it take kung ako mag-a-apply?
Yes, sir.
Siya for COVID.
Apo. Mr. Chair, opo, katulad nga po na sinabi ko kanina, sa PNBF nga po, nakalista naman ito as an anti-parasitic. Kaya pwede po talagang mag-apply as anti-parasitic. At ngayon nga po, meron dalawa kaming applicants na tinutulungan na nga po namin na bilisan para po yung kanilang requirements, minimum requirements ay makomplete. And once complete, kaya po namin yan within 2 weeks. Totoo, basta po yung known and proven naman po kasi talaga as an anti-parasitic. Tapos yung second question niya po kanina, later po kasi kung idadagdag nila yung indication for COVID-19, doon po yung clinical trials for COVID-19 magagamit. Pwede naman sa later na po yun. At kung talaga kung for treatment, kailangan po may clinical trials for treatment. At kung for prophylaxis naman po, separate clinical trial po for prophylaxis. So bawat indication po kasi iba-ibang pag-aaral yun. No? Pero tama po kayo, yung as anti-parasitic, basta po kompleto lahat yan, mabilis po nating magagawa.
So ngayon, meron na tayong clinical trials for treatment and for prevention o yung magkakaroon tayo ng for prevention or as a prophylaxis. Tama po ba, DG Domingo?
Pag po natapos na yung mga pag-aaral doon, pwede na po nilang isamang dagdag yun. Pero at this time, ang talaga pong meron sila as an anti-parasitic. So yun po talaga ang pinakamadali ngayon at pinakamabilis.
Wait. So clinical trials as anti-parasitic, hindi ba proven na to?
Ay opo, yun nga po, proven na nga po. Yung anti-parasitic, wala na po kailangan clinical trial yon. Maaari na po talaga siyang i-register as an anti-parasitic right now.
So wala nang clinical trials to. Kung nag-approve ko ngayon o meron ng pending application, ma-approve ka agad. Gaano katagal ang approval?
Basta nga po na kompleto nila yung minimum requirements natin for safety, quality.
Na ang kabayo. So, bakit pwede nating pabilisan dahil 40 years na tong gamot na to? Bakit natin hihintayin pa ng 2 weeks kung kompleto na?
Hindi ibig sabihin yung pag-check lang naman po yun, pero kung makumpleto naman po agad yun as soon as possible naman po, kaya naman pong less. Basta lang po talaga kompleto ang dokumento.
Okay. So, yun po yung natin eh. Ngayon may mga question po na sinasabi sila na ipauhuli daw ng FDA pag mali ang use ng ivermectin. Tama ho ba?
Yun nga po yung describe sinabi namin kanina, pag po panghayop tapos nire-reseta po sa tao. Yun po ang bawal. At saka po yung unregistered na produkto.
Okay, so ganito na. Kung meron tayong gamot na inapruban kayo na pang anti-parasite, scabies, so hindi niyo na pauhuli yan pag prescribe ng doktor.
Opo, dahil ang doktor po may karapatan naman siya based on his experience and his knowledge of the patient to prescribe medicine.
Okay, so clear po na kung meron na tayong drug na ivermectin na for parasite, kung linawin natin, kontra bulate, yan po yung sinasabi niyan na pantao. Ako, doktor, pwede ko siyang i-describe. Ang tawag po yata dito sa term ng mga doktor, off-label prescription. Tama po ba yun? Na pwede na siyang ibigay kung sakaling as a prophylaxis or as a treatment. Tama po ba?
Well, pwede po niyang ireseta yung gamot pero dapat po hindi sabihin niya sa pasyente kung ano yung gamot na yon at kung anong magiging epekto nun sa katawan niya.
Okay. So, kaya nga, binanggit ko po itong argument na to kasi nga, there are doctors that is pro for the use of this ivermectin either as a prophylaxis or treatment. And there's are also group of doctors na sinasabi nila, hindi dapat. So, we can leave it up to the doctor ng mag-prescribe o gumamit nitong gamot na to na hindi po huhuli ng FDA. Tama po ba?
Sir, sorry po, hindi ko po naputol po
So, simple lang po. Kung ang isang doktor nag-prescribe ng gamot na for human consumption, na alam natin anti-parasite, no? Kasi available na dito sa market or abroad, may nag-import niyan or may nagbigay, hindi nyo po pahuhuli o hindi na bawal sa doktor. No, kanya ng desisyon yon. Either nagbigay niya as a prophylaxis or a treatment. Kasi kung ako doktor, to boost your immunity, kailangan wala kang bulate. Bigay kita niyan. So, okay po ba yon?
Hindi naman po natin ipahuhuli yun. Opo. Basta po nagreseta ang doktor, may karapatan naman po siyang magreseta dahil siya naman ang may alam kung ano yung gamot at kung ano yung pasyente niya.
Okay. So, I got now further question, Mr. Chair. Thank you, DG Domingo, for clearing that question in my mind. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable BG Lacson. Since he is the last interpellator, TSBH is taking her second round.
Mr. Chair.
Did you list for the first round?
Yes,
sir?
I message, nag-register, nag-direct message ako, Mr. Chair. This is not an interpellation, just a manifestation.
Okay, Deputy Minority Leader Kaloy, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Haba-haba na rin yung ating talakayan. No? In fact, hindi na ito una na pagkakataon na nagkakaroon nga ng talakayan dito sa usapin ng ano ba ang mabisang gamot na gamitin natin dahil dito sa nangyayaring pandemya ng COVID. No? At dalawang punto lang, Mr. Chair. No? Itong nakita natin dito, kailangan talaga mabilis ng umaksyon talaga ang pamahalaan. Dahil ang nakasalalay dito, hindi lang naman iilan, kundi buhay ng milyon-milyon nating mga mamamayang Pilipino. No? Mahigit isang taon na tayong nasa iba't ibang level ng quarantine o lockdown. Ito ay umaasa pa rin tayo sa mga pangako, no, na magkakaroon halimbawa ng massive vaccination program, massive testing, no. But more importantly, siguro dapat tama rin na pinag-uusapan yung mga preventive measures, no. Although talagang matalinhaga pa rin, malaking usapin pa rin itong COVID-19 na COVID as a virus, no, na pinag-aaralan ng mga dalubhasa. So that's the point. Yung kailangan talagang lumalabas kanina, no? Kung may kulang, hamon din sa Kongreso. Kung may kulang in terms of legislation, kailangan maghabol ang legislatura. But more than that,
hindi pwedeng sabihin na lang na kulang ng legislation kung wala namang nagmumula doon sa mga regulatory agencies, no, na tulak, no, for whatever legislation that we need, no, dahil this is the first time I think in our lifetime na sumasagupa tayo sa ganitong pandemya ng COVID, no, and naging epekto nito sa ating ekonomiya, sa ating mga buhay-buhay. That's the first, no. Second, Mr. Chair, siguro ang napakalaking hamon sa atin dito at napakalaking aral, no, gaya nung nakita natin doon sa mga meetings or pagdinig sa Committee on Agriculture, Trade and Industry, kailangan masiguro ang ating pagkain. Dito naman sa usapin na ito, lumalabas na dito yung pangangailangan talaga at matagal na naming pinananawagan dito that we really have to develop our own local pharma industry, no? Dahil sabi ng mga eksperto, this will not be the first nor this will be the last pandemic. So talagang nakakalungkot na nung mga nakaraang mga dekada, tayo yung nagdo-donate ng mga bakuna kahit na doon sa pinakamalaking bansa ngayon, itong China, ngayon talagang umaasa na lang tayo sa awa, no, at sa mga donasyon, no, para unang makarating dito ang mga bakunang kinakailangan natin dahil talagang halos wala na tayong pagtutok doon sa ating local pharmaceutical industry, no. All of these things could have been developed in our locality, no, domestically, but parang naging hostage tayo ng mga big pharmaceutical companies, no, imported lahat, no. And alam naman natin na napakamahal, no. Hindi lang mahal mabuhay dito sa Pilipinas ngayon, mahal kung magkasakit ka pa, no. Mahal din kung mamamatay ka, no? So yun po siguro ang mga aral na nitong mga pagdinig natin. I suppose this debate on ivermectin is good for as prophylaxis or as treatment will continue in the coming days, but sana itong mga aral na ito ay hindi masasayang, Mr. Chair, no? Dahil tuloy-tuloy pa rin itong ating pakikipaglaban dito sa mga hamon na dala ng COVID-19 pandemic. And I again thank the committee, no, for initiating this motu proprio hearing today, and pasalamat din sa mga all the resource persons, no, from both sides of the coin, no, na nagbigay ng kanilang mga punto rito. And I hope yung mga challenges, no, na binigay sa pamahalaan sa mga agencies, the FDA and the other agencies, DOH ay na-pick up naman nila, no? Hindi pwedeng tuloy-tuloy lang tayo nag-uusap ng ganito, tuloy-tuloy lang na nagdidebate, pero hindi umuusad yung mga pananawagan ng ating mga mamamayan na magkaroon ng katugunan, no? Mga proactive measures for this COVID-19 pandemic. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon na makapagbigay ng manifestasyon. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat.
Thank you, Representative Deputy Minority Leader Carlos Zarate. Before we end, there are two more people to speak. We will have Dr. Akbayani, then Deputy Speaker B.H. Herrera. Deputy Speaker, do you want to go first or last?
Okay na po si Dr. Iggy muna.
Okay. Dr. Akbayani, you have the floor on your evidence to support your argument.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me this opportunity again. May I share my slides po? This is just to answer yung Sina.
Okay,
Dun
please
sa
proceed.
kulang pa raw yung data.
Okay. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So ito po yung minadali ko po kasi kanina. So punta na po ako rito sa tinatawag nating we already know it's safe po. Malinaw naman po yan kasi matagal na siyang gamot. So ang tanong ay efficacious ba? Tama na po ba yung study? So ito po nakikita ko. Meron po tinatawag na big 1-2 punch of ivermectin. Ano po yun? Napatay na po nung ivermectin, ang virus, sa loob ng test tube. More than any other drug. Sa loob lang ng 2 araw, patay na po yung virus. Napatunayan na rin po niya, nabablock po niya yung binding sites ng virus, kaya hindi po makareplicate yung virus. So ito po yan, kung gusto niyo pong i-research, ito po yung study na galing po ito sa Monash University sa Australia na sinasabi na papatay niya 5,000-fold reduction in viral RNA within 48 hours. Ito naman po yung sinasabi nagbabind po siya sa receptor. Napaka-importante nito kasi akala nila kailangan masyadong mataas yung dose. Hindi, dahil kasi nahaharang niya. O, in vivo, ito po yung in actual life na clinical studies. Bibilisan ko po rito. No? Ngayon ganito yung tinatawag namin forest plot. Pag ikaw yung tuldok, nasa gitna, malamang walang epekto yung gamot mo. Kasi neutral ka neutral. So gusto mong pakita na yung gamot mo malayo sa gitna, may effect, may positive o negative effect. So kung negative, meron din katulad nitong studying ito. So ito, 52 na po ang tapos. Hindi po yung sinasabi nila na iilan lang. 52 na po ang tapos na study. Iba-ibang klase. May early, may late, may prophylaxis. Okay. Meron na pong 27 randomized controlled trials as of April 20. Randomized po yan. Hindi po yan yung observation lang. Tignan niyo po, nasa kaliwa sa early treatment. Sa late treatment, medyo hindi masyado maganda, 38% lang improvement. Pero late na kasi. Ito naman yung prophylaxis. Napakaganda po. Alam niyo, itong tinatawag nitong forest plot, para sa pula sa puti yan Kung tumatayo po kayo, kumbaga ilang beses niyo itapon yung parating pula. Parating green. Hindi po pula. Ano ang chance yan na pag tinapon mo ulit, magiging pula? Napakaliit. Kasi napakarami ng study. Ito po, tinignan ko po kung bakit ito pula. Inaral ko po yan yung kay Kishoria. Ang reason po pula yan dahil 1 day lang nila binigay samantalang late stage na 1 tablet lang po binigay nila doon sa pasyente. Saka hindi po marami yung study. Finally, all 24 ivermectin COVID-19, peer-reviewed na po ito. Ano na po talaga, clinicized na nila. Wala na tayong masasabi dito sa 24 studies. April 20 po yan. Yan po ang final ng 24 peer-reviewed studies. Early treatment, 84% improvement. Late treatment, 36%. Kaya hindi po namin gusto yung tinatawag nilang compassionate use kasi huli na Gusto po namin siya prophylaxis. Tignan nyo, 88%. All studies, 72% improvement. Pag tinapon nyo po yung inyong dice, malamang po green yan. Ang chance po maging pula yan, malabo po. Ganun po kasiguradong ivermectin. Okay, ito po yung study na ginawa ni Tess Flory at kinumpare yun sa ginagamit po ng WHO. Ito po yung NMA initiative. Ginagamit po ito ng WHO. Pero pinag-aralan po natin ng PAASE. Ito po, noong April 9. Okay, ito ang conclusion nila. Hindi po ako ito. Ang conclude po nito ay yung PAASE. Ang analysis nila, maganda po yung ginawa ni Dr. Tess Flory. More studies given. Yan po, ito po ang resulta niya. 62% reduction in deaths. Talaga po nakatanggal ng makabawas na namamatay. Kaya ito po, kung hindi binigyan, 62% po pwedeng namatay. So maganda po ang analysis, moderate certainty. Ito naman po yung isa, yung ginagamit po ng WHO. Hindi po nagbigay ng detalye. Hindi po, kulang na kulang po sila magbigay ng detalye. No conclusion on difference. Ito po, evidence graded, wala rin po silang binigay na grade. Hindi po ako nag-analyze niyan. Paase po yan, mga scientists po natin yan. Okay, ito po maganda. Kung ayaw nyo maniwala dyan sa mga sinatawag naming studies, tignan natin ang nangyari sa buong mundo. Ito na po ang mga bansang gumagamit sa buong mundo. India, yan na po. Even America, kasama dyan, Panama. So countrywide, marami na. Pero may mga lugar na may regions pa lang. Maganda rin po yung regions Papakita ko sa inyo kung bakit importante yung regions. For example, ito, sa Slovakia, ginamit nila ang ivermectin itong mga panahon na ito, January. Naging nationalized na po yung ivermectin. Tumaas ng konti, pero pababa na sila. Ito po sa Czech Republic. Dito po nila inumpisahan, pababa na po. Ito po yung mga bansa nakapaligid sa Czech Republic, sa Slovakia. Ito po Poland, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Ukraine. So titignan ko po yan kung kumusta po ang mga kaso nila dyan. Kasi sila magkakatabi. Okay, ito na po sila lahat. Ito po ang Germany, ito po ang Poland, ito po ang Ukraine. Tignan nyo ang kanilang kaso. Samantalang ang Hungary, Czech Republic, Austria, Slovakia, lahat po ay pababa na. Lahat po ito Sasabihin ko na gumagamit ng ivermectin except Austria, sabihin nyo. Pero alam nyo ba, ang Austria pala ang nag-i-import, ang nag-i-export. Sila nag-i-export po sa Slovakia. So malamang po ang Austria gumagamit rin po ng ivermectin. Ito naman po, sa Mexico, makikita nyo parang tumaas pero bumababa na rin sa Mexico. Although siyempre may din natin sabihin dahil sa vaccination, dahil dumadami rin ang papavaccinate. However, kung tignan nyo po ito, tinatawag po rito yung per capita. Kung maputla po, ibig sabihin konti yung kaso per number of people. So ito po, 120 yan, ganyan po. No? So sa ibang lugar ng Mexico, marami pang kaso. Pero may isang lugar po, Chiapas, Mexico. Pag-aralan po natin yan kasi sila pinakamaraming taong gumagamit ng ivermectin sa buong Mexico. Sa Uttar Pradesh, yan po yung lugar sa India. Pinakamaraming gumamit yan sa India. 200 million po ang population yan. Marami pa sa Pilipinas. Ito po siya. Kung titignan niyo po, yan ang Uttar Pradesh. Per capita, maputla. Ibig sabihin maganda. Yung mga katabi niya rin, maputla. Yung mga hindi siguro masyadong gumamit, ayan po. Punta naman tayo sa Peru, katulad po ng kwento ko kanina. Dito po, inumpisahan ang paggamit ng ivermectin. Official na siya noong September. Pababa po ng pababa until November, nagpalit po ng presidente. Pagdating po ng December, nagsabi sila na tama na, wag na gamitin ng ivermectin. Ito po ang nangyari sa Peru. So ito nga po yung summary ko. Kung hindi pa po ebidensya yon, napatunayan ko na sa test tube, napatunayan ko na sa meta-analysis, napatunayan ko na sa lahat ng clinical studies, 52 na po. Ewan ko, ang tawag ko na po din ay intellectual dishonesty na po yun. Hindi nyo pa rin nakikita. Napakarami ng study. Kaya ako po yung nagtataka, bakit pa tayo gagawa ng isa pa? Magtatagal patuloy ng ilang buwan pa. Ayaw pa aminin nila Dr. Domingo na hindi naman po linggo yan. Para matapos yung study niyan at least 3 months. Kaya delaying tactic po yan. Pasensya na po para sagutin ko yung mga colleagues pero kailangan po tulungan natin ang ating bansa. Ito po yung aking mga summary. Salamat po.
Thank you, Dr. Agbayani.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, quick lang ho before si DS Herrera to close the program. If she will allow.
Your
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. Dagdag lang po doon na maganda ho yung binanggit ni Dr. Agbayani kasi for us policy makers, yung science po niyan o yung medical setup, hindi ho tayo ang dapat mag-decide kundi mga experts talaga. Pero from a country experience, dyan makikita natin how the policy should be different. Dagdag ko kay Dr. Agbayani, ang Egypt at saka po, ang Egypt is about 100 million, pareho ng Pilipinas. Bangladesh is about 165 million. Ganon din po ang experience. Lower ang kanilang infected ng COVID and lower ang deaths. Tayo ho, mataas. In fact, they're now mababa no? Hundreds. Tayo ho, we're still at the thousands ng mga infected. Included there is yung sinasabi nga po na binanggit ni Dr. Dalmasio kanina, hindi pa rin pwedeng mag-prescribe ang mga doktor natin because there's a possibility na matanggal ang license nila. And that is coming from a person who is with PRC. Dahil sinabi nga ho niya, kahit na may FDA, may problema pa rin. But I'd like to go back po sa DOH kasi very critical sa akin to, si Yusek Guerrero. Kasi nga ho, I'm comparing ivermectin to remdesivir. Dr. Guerrero, ang isa lang ho ang tanong ko, di ba? Paulit-ulit ko, sinasabi ko, WHO sinabi hindi pwede. Ang sinasabi nyo may continuing studies. Pero absolute na ho tayo sa WHO, di po ba? Tapos na ang study nila.
Yung remdesivir po, yes. But there are also trials kasi hindi lang po sa Solidarity. Although pinakamalaking trial ng remdesivir yung sa Solidarity.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, let's focus on remdesivir. So tapos na po ang trial nila. Okay, following the line of DOH, you are following WHO recommendations. Tama po ba?
We are looking at the totality of the evidence. So yung Solidarity plus the other trials.
Okay, so in the case of ivermectin, ayaw nyo sundin, but in the case of remdesivir, in the case of ivermectin, susundin nyo sila, but in the case of remdesivir, hindi nyo sila susundin.
Again po, for all drugs, we look at the totality of evidence po. Ngayon po, itong ivermectin, naghihintay lang tayo ng yung mga additional evidence, pero
No. Let's focus on WHO. Sa WHO, ayaw nyo munang sundin. We're doing our trials, ayaw nyo munang sundin. With remdesivir, ayaw nyo munang sundin. With ivermectin, susundin nyo muna na huwag gamitin.
kasi po ngayon ang basehan is yung sa living CPG at nagkaroon naman po ng evidence no, for a segment of a population.
Ma'am, ano lang po? Question lang tayo, para lang humabilis, no? As an institution, kasi sabi nyo yung WHO, nung last hearing namin, sabi ng DOH, dahil ang WHO recommended na wag gamitin, we are following na wag gamitin. But with remdesivir, we are saying na hindi muna namin susundin ng WHO.
Okay, yung last year po, nung nag-present yung WHO, partial analysis po kasi yon. Kaya nung nag-review po ulit yung living CPG with additional data, kaya po na ipakita yung data na mukhang may benefit for a segment.
Ma'am, that is very confusing. WHO is already conclusive. Remdesivir is not recommended. Wag yun sabihin yung living dito po yan sa atin eh. Yung WHO, ang sinabi ng WHO, it is not recommended. Yes, for the record, ma'am.
Recommend yun po. WHO is also, hindi po tayo binding kasi yung WHO.
Okay na po yan. Pero it recommended conclusive na. Okay po? Ngayon, if the people will file a case against the Republic represented by Department of Health, susundan nila yan eh. Kaya gusto ko iklaro kasi hindi nyo pwedeng ituro ang hospitals and doctors because nilagay ninyo sa guidelines nyo yan. Tama po, Dr. Guerrero?
Basta po may basehan po.
Okay, so karoon natin yun ha. So people can file a case against the Republic, against DOH for continuously allowing remdesivir even if WHO has recommended otherwise. So, yung klaro ko yun. Number 2, ang gusto ko lang i-clear is dun sa price monitoring ninyo, the people can get the assistance of DTI, hindi na ho kayo, dun sa overpriced remdesivir.
Pwede pong isumbong sa Department of Health at DTI.
Okay. At kayo din po mismo, will you be proactive in chasing the hospitals that are overpricing remdesivir?
Yes, sir. Kasi may SRP naman po tayo. Kung may proof, may resibo na nag-overprice sa SRP, pwede pong parusahan.
Ma'am, crisis na po tayo, emergency na po. Ang mga tao hindi makalabas. Pwede po bang proactively tingnan nyo na may mga makikita nyo naman sa bawat hospitals eh. Kung isa-isa nyo yung mga tao, kawawa naman po. Lalo na yung mga nasa probinsya hindi alam ang nangyari. Do we have that commitment?
Yes, sir. Sige po.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. DSBH, thank you for the time. Chairman, maraming salamat and congratulations to your committee and to your leadership.
Thank you, Representative Defensor. Next, last interpolator for the second round, DSBH Herrera, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair Mike. Again, babalik ko lang, gusto ko lang malinawan. Andito pa ba si Yusek? Sabi ko, di ba may living clinical guidelines. Pero sinabi ni Dr. Dalmason kanina, hindi dapat magkaroon ng living clinical guidelines. Kaya kanina sinasabi mo, living clinical recommendations. So ba't sinasabi ni Dr. Guerrero guidelines? Ano po ba talaga? At saka bakit sinasabi ni Dr. Dalmason na wala dapat CPG sa bansa? Gusto ko lang malinawan, di ko po naiintindihan yun.
Nung nag-start kasi mukhang CPG talaga siya kung DH, Madam Congressman. Parang clinical practice guidelines yung ginawa talaga ng PISNID. Pero ngayon nga, yung living clinical recommendations na lang yung ang binaiden nga na rin ng FDA yung aming definition para sa DAU to include lahat po sa living clinical recommendation. So yung ngayon, hindi na guidelines.
Okay. Yusek, katulad yan, di ba, na ilagay mo sa DEU yung TOSI, tapos yung hydrochloric, kahit na hindi pa conclusive yung mga evidences nila. So, kindly take a look, baka yung ivermectin, pwede na rin ilagay dito sa DEU. Kasi, at least available siya. Ako para kasi emergency na rin na kung ano-anong gray market ang pumapasok na ivermectin eh. Because meron tayong right to self-determination as patients, di ba? May nagbabasa yung mga tao, they decide on their own what's good for their body. Pero kung gray market yung nagpo-flourish dahil ang tagal nating maglabas ng CPR or EUA for ivermectin. Can you really take a look, and sana sabi niyo this afternoon may meeting kayo, sana tignan niyo na baka pwede naman natin to ilagay sa DEU para makapag-register na lahat.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, titingnan ko po talaga, titingnan natin kung DEU, kasi kung CPR, kaya rin naman na mabilis, mas maganda pa rin talaga yung CPR na talaga. No? But we will check. Yeah, we will check. Yes, ma'am.
And then, Yusek, tignan natin yung technology transfer ha, because sabi ng local pharma, for example, nag-submit na yung isang pharma company, ma-approve mo siya, pwede na niyang i-share yung technology na yan sa others para mas maraming volume of dito, mas bababa ang presyo.
Opo, alam ko po meron silang ganun yung so pasensya na po kayong technicalities kasi nung licensing
Yes, no problem.
pero parang meron ganun na malaking big CPR and then CPRs that follow it. No? So we will check.
Okay, and then sir, sana wag na nating hintayin matapos yung clinical trial na inutos ni Presidente. While waiting, pwede naman nating i-consider yung DEU tsaka yung CPR because the faster we have this product available, mapipigilan natin yung gray market from coming in the country.
Yes.
I mean, from flourishing here in the country.
Yes, Madam Congresswoman, Mr. Chair. Yun nga po sinabi ko kanina, pwede naman talaga siya na i-rehistro na ngayon. Uunahin na natin siyang i-register for the known and old indication of as an antiparasitic. Pwedeng idadagdag na lang later yung indications for COVID-19 pag na-complete na yung mga trial.
But their very big problem is the yung comparing it to another product kasi parang magiging first generic product sa dito. So yun po yung tignan natin dahil kung mapapatunayan naman natin yung safety and efficacy, I don't think it's going to be, I think it's negligible naman kung wala po yun. So please take a look at that. And lastly, Yusek, yung leronlimab, can we make it available na mag-stock na tayo sa bansa? Kasi katulad lang din naman ng remdesivir, issue din naman siya kung absence of clinical trial and all that. But now that may binigyan kayo ng isang CSP, we expect that a lot of hospitals might adopt the same kung nakagaling siya talaga kay former President Erap. Then, hindi daw kasi sila makapag-stock up eh. Can we allow na stock up? Kasi ayoko na naman pong mangyaring tocilizumab to na lahat ng tao umiiyak sa akin because they don't have access to this. I don't want to create despair sa Filipino people na posibleng gamot pero wala tayong access dito.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Madam Congresswoman, pwede po yun. Hindi naman kailangan per patient sila mag-request. So yung hospital, pwede po siya mag-request for 100 patients in advance. And then isa-isahin na lang nila. Yung isang CSP lang po, pwede niya na agad kunin lahat yon. Tapos nang hindi pa alam kung sino yung pasyente. And then as they use on the patients, tsaka na lang po nire-report. So pwede po yun na hindi naman at every patient.
Dr. Randy, baka meron po kayong gustong tanungin with regards to this one on how we could stock up here in the Philippines? Is Dr. Randy still with us?
Yes, I am, Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
You are recognized, Dr. Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for that. Thank you, Deputy Speaker Herrera. Yes, the problem that we're having with leronlimab is that its indication is really for the critically sick COVID-19. And these are the patients on life support. So the essence of time is of primary importance in these patients. These patients really cannot wait. So it is very, very important if you can really stock this drug. And we've been having several requests already of I had patients calling me up at 3 a.m. in the morning just looking for the drug. I really don't have it on me. I'm not connected in any way with any company or anything like that. As a disclosure lang po, I don't receive anything from this endeavor. I just did the research to get the leronlimab available in the Philippines. The importance of having it stocked is once a CSP is filed, DG Eric usually requires approximately 24 hours. There are some instances under 24 hours it's approved. But the transport of the drug from abroad to the Philippines takes a long time. Takes approximately around 5, minsan 7 days. And when it reaches here, I have had already one applicant who already passed away even before the drug had arrived. So in order to mitigate this problem, we were hoping that indeed that the hospitals or even the local partner here can stock up on the drug to make it available pending approval of the CSP from the FDA. So once the CSP is already approved, we have the drug available and we can dispense right away. So that is the ideal setup for now.
How do we do that? Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, if I may be recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, pwede yun, Randy, what they do is the hospital will request it even without the patient being identified yet. And then they can stock the medicine there. Tapos pag nagamit na, tsaka na lang i-report. Kasi I think it's because liraglab is new, no? And they are not used to the system yet. And they've been requesting per patient, one per patient. But it is possible for the hospital to request for several patients, even though the patients are not identified yet. And then they're just required to report to us later on whom they use the medicines on. So pwede yun.
Is that acceptable, Dr. Nicolas? Is that something
thank you,
possible?
Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Deputy Speaker, yes, I understand the position of the FDA because leronlimab, actually the classification of this therapeutic is still investigational. So reasonably, hands of our regulating body is really tied with this, unless of course there's a change in the regulations that will allow an investigation of drug under an EUA. But under the CSP, we can work with just having this in stock already in the hospitals. Okay. Deputy Speaker, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope that clarifies the matter. Mr. Chair, again, Mr. Chair, can I be recognized for my closing na po?
Okay, please give your closing remarks as the lead initiator of the topic. DSBH, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of Speaker Lord Alan Velasco, we thank the Committee on Good Government for scheduling this multi-propy investigation right away as time is of the essence para magawa na natin ang paraan para mapabilis at maging accessible and affordable ang COVID-treated protocols here in the country, both for preventive, prophylactic, and cure and treatment. Kasi napakahalaga po na makahanap po tayo niyan. Thank you to Yusek Domingo because nag-act naman po kayo kaagad. So I expect na mas lalo pa tayong mag-act ng mabilis kasi talagang time is of the essence. So I'm really asking for a feedback right away po sana dun sa mga hinihingi ng ating mga representatives here in the committee na magawang aksyon ng FDA saka ng DOH. But I thank you because lagi po kayong humaharap sa amin and at least that's a sign of good faith para po sa aming lahat. To the resource persons, CDCPH, thank you very much. Dr. Iggy, Dr. Randy, sa lahat po ng tumutulong po sa amin. And of course, doon po sa organization ng local pharma industry. Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. Kay Ms. Pinky Tobiano, sa ating kay Dr. Dalmacion. Ayun pala, Yusek, baka naman yung EUA na EO kasi matagal yung batas. Matagal pag ginawa namin yung batas even if the President certifies it as urgent. Baka yung admin order on EUA, yun na yung mapalitan natin in accordance to what Dr. Dalmacion is saying. Is that possible?
The AO, ma'am, we will check yun. Mas madali yung AO, no? Yung EO, syempre, alam nyo naman, hindi rin naman ganun kadali yun. But we will check. I think that's one of the things I listed to see, no? Lalo na yung using the national guidelines. Definitely po, we will look into that.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, to all the resource persons, maraming salamat po for your time. Wag po kayong magsasawa dahil marami pa po tayong pagsasamahan dito po sa ating quest to help solve this pandemic. Including, sabi ko nga, palagi kong sinasabi, pag po sa panahon ng pandemya, where people are dying, red tape is a grave sin. Kaya sana po, action agad po tayo because that's what's needed from us by our country. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Again, Mr. Chair, thank you very much po. And to all the members of Congress who participated, maraming salamat din po.
Thank you, DSPH. Before we end, I'd like to say, and I'd like to remind the fellow members who are very interested in this topic that since there is a deficiency in legislation for this very important registration of new drugs, So there is already a Senate Bill number 0244. There is also a counterpart authored by Representative Tan and Representative Pablo John Garcia, House Bill
Okay.
8666 and House Bill 8816. We should find ways to have this certified by the President as urgent so that the topic today at hand, we can help our people undergo with the procedure to register drugs. We can help it speed up and provide a timely way to assess this medicine and other drugs to help our people. So again, I'd like to thank everybody, the members who participated. You have very good questions and very good points. And to our very many resource persons who have spent almost 5 hours here today, I thank you for your time. And rest assured, maybe in after 6 to 8 weeks, we can have another hearing to assess what has happened since our last meeting. What are the improvements or what has been changed? So please give your time again. We will definitely have a second hearing. And do I hear any motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, Mr.
Move
Chair.
to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
As there are no other for discussion, I move for the adjournment of this meeting. The meeting is now adjourned. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagkakaisa sa gawain ng Kongreso at manatili po tayong ligtas sa ating mga tahanan. Maraming salamat po. Thank you po. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, everyone.
Maraming salamat sa lahat.
Really.